This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good afternoon and welcome to Nkuhuma, Sabi Sands, Greater Kruger National Park. We've just left camp and immediately following up on monkey alarm calls. They've just gone bounding across the grass there. I don't know if you're going to see them now very, very quick. There they go. Well caught, BK. Geez, it's like high-speed filming. So they were in marula trees just behind us, alarm calling, and we came to investigate. They've now run off. Obviously always hoping that they might have spotted a leopard. It remains to be seen. Tristan's going to work the other side of quarantine. I'm going to work down towards the dam, see if we can pick up on any tracks. The inquisitive and naughty vervet monkey. Often a plague in camp. Very clever, very adaptable. But you got to be careful around them because they'll grab anything that they can eat. Just yesterday they jumped in the vehicle and grabbed the leftover fruit that I'd had in here. Chucked my camera on the floorboard, binoculars, everything. So, naughty little guys, but they're very useful. Well, my name is David Hancock. On camera we have BK, and we're going to be showing you the wonders of the African bush this afternoon. And remember, the first 45 minutes is dedicated to the kids, so please remember to send your questions in to kidsquestions@wildearth.tv. What do we have over here? On our right hand side, a beautiful Nyala bull. Excuse me. And he's looking at something, so I'm gonna not spend too much time here. I want to carry on and see if we did have a correct assumption of a predator. So while I go and search to see what I can find, I'm going to send you over to Tswalu with the giraffe. Enjoy.
Welcome back to Tswalu from Yandre and myself. We're having the most beautiful giraffe sighting at the moment. It's this young female that's actually just been walking towards the vehicle for the past couple of minutes. It's very, very curious, got her head down. She's kind of figured out. She's satisfied that we're no threat. And it's interesting that she's so curious about us because you can see there's other giraffe in the distance that are just carrying on feeding. And there she goes. It always amazes me how they can feed on these acacias, these thorn trees. But they tend to be going for the leaves at the tips. So they're not often ingesting those long thorns. Some of you that are familiar with the reserves down in the Lowveld, Nkuhuma, Nyala, those places, you might notice how pale some of our giraffe are in comparison. And you tend to find giraffe in these very arid areas have that paler color, and that could be probably not necessarily a camouflage thing, but more a thermoregulation thing. Well, I think that would have to be proven, but that's the thinking behind it. Now he's watching something behind. She's watching something behind us. So there might be more giraffe somewhere else here, but we'll just keep our eyes open. For those who don't know us yet, Yandre is behind this awesome piece of equipment here, and my name's Dylan. A lot of you know Yandre. He's an okay cameraman. No, I'm an okay guide. I'm fascinated by this behavior. This giraffe is really curious about the vehicle. It may also be the profile, with the camera on. And also the fact that Yandre is wearing his giraffe onesie today, which is odd. But that could be attracting attention there. Sorry, I didn't get the name there, unfortunately, but that's a lovely question. And yes, they have the same number of vertebrae as people. So that's a wonderful question. That's but particularly if you look at the length of the neck, that's a question that we get asked regularly. Do they have more vertebrae? That neck is so long. But when you actually, if you ever have in that position, you have a giraffe skeleton, you'll actually see those vertebrae are elongated. So whereas ours are very, very short, theirs are elongated. A mouse has the same amount of vertebrae as a giraffe. So yeah, it's just different scales. That's all it is. So this one seems to have lost interest in us finally. So we're gonna amble down towards a little dam, see if there's anything drinking there. But in the meantime, let's head over to Tristan and see what they got on that side.
Well, we're doing very much the same thing, trying to follow up on these monkeys alarm calling that David was talking about earlier. There's a couple water holes in the area, and maybe if we're lucky, one of our leopards has gone to go drink, and so we're just checking them as well. But before we get into all of that, my name's Tristan, and on camera I've got Alex this afternoon. Alex, we need to pull up our socks after this morning's performance. Alex and I had a little incident this morning where we managed to drive past a lioness without seeing her. Literally did not see her at all. It's quite a funny story, which we'll talk about later. But the disconcerting part about it is not so much the driving past. These things happen. She was out in the open and I should have seen her, but I didn't, and that's the way things go. But the disconcerting part is that I then walked past her further, once past, back again past. And I still didn't see her, so I don't know if I need to get my eyes checked or if there's a problem, but we're going to try and be better this afternoon and see if we can actually find what we're looking for and not drive past things. I do apologize to everybody for driving past our line this morning. The other probably disconcerting is that there was tracks for a further 13 of them, so there had to be 14 lions there and I didn't see one. Alex, we didn't do well this morning. We failed. We failed the guiding test this morning. It's classic though that you can look back at footage and see these things. It's very, very funny to watch. And while I am to blame, I'm going to put the blame squarely on many of the people that were watching as well, because you guys all missed it too. No, I'm kidding. It's not your fault. There was lots of picture breakup, and so you wouldn't have seen much. It pretty much is my fault completely. Okay, so this is the pan that I was talking about. So often this little pan here is quite a productive spot for leopards to drink at. It's a quiet little area. There's really dense, thick bush quite close to it, which means that they can hide away in there during the heat of the day, rest, and then when they want to drink, they just come out quickly, drink, and then can go back into the thickets. And that means that it's a really good place to start off with. When monkeys are alarm calling close to the camp, this is one of the first places I like to start, purely because it's much quieter to the side. There's not as much hustle and bustle of people moving around. It's really kind of calm, and like I say, I know that a number of the leopards really like this water hole because the water is quite fresh. It's pumped, it's not rainwater, and so it's generally a good place for them to go. The thing is, though, now that Tumbeta was built, so Tumbeta is a new lodge that was built close to quarantine on the other side of this, that has got a little water hole of its own that is also very secluded, and so it might be at that water hole. But what I want to quickly do is we're just going to do a little loop around, because I just want to check if there's any tracks. So we're looking for any footprints that this could have been left behind by a leopard. Maybe it drank and it went into the drainage line, maybe it drank and went into that drainage line, or the drainage line behind me. So I just want to have a quick little loop around it. Generally you can see quite quickly if an animal was here drinking. They leave a nice little pug mark is the name of it, and that should then make it easy for us to be able to see if somebody was here. So nothing that I can see this side. Just want to quickly check. There's a little game path up here, which is also a worthwhile place to have a little look. Alright, while I have a little look on this path here and just check if anything's walked, oh, it's very overgrown, I'm not going to see anything there. Let's send you up to and beyond Nyala for the first time this afternoon. Eric's out and about, and I'm sure he wants to say good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to And Beyond Nyala. My name is Eric, behind camera is Owen, and this afternoon we thought we had quite a lot going on this morning, and so we thought we would try and have the same bit of luck and go and look for that male leopard. We went to his last position, and unfortunately he's moved off, and so now we're just basically trying to see if we can find tracks. We've got lots of options though. I mean, we've got that male lion who's got that injury that we might go and check a little bit later on. But then Owen and I were saying that it's been a while since we've seen those little lion cubs that have been around. And there was a stage where we were seeing them almost every day. And now I think it's been about 3 or 4, maybe even 5 days since we've seen them. And I mean, we have a very good idea of where she is. So in the cooler parts of the afternoon, we might start heading down towards the riverbed to see if we have any luck with those little lion cubs this afternoon. Owen and I were having a good chuckle at Tristan's blooper driving straight past that lion, and we were just thinking to ourselves, how many times has that happened in real life? We must have driven past thousands of leopards in our time. I'm sure it happens all the time. It's just funny that was on camera. So we're quite far away from where this male leopard was seen this morning. We probably maybe about between 800 to a kilometer north of us. Ethan, you're 8 years old, and you're asking how we tell the difference between leopard tracks and lion tracks. And they are very, very similar, Ethan. I'm just trying to look. I had my little book that shows you the tracks, but I can't seem to find it. Must be underneath all of my hundreds of jackets. If I find it, Ethan, I'll show you, but it's basically the size. And so a big male lion's track will probably be about the size of my hand. That's a decent gauge to mark, whereas a big male leopard would probably only be about that big. And so that's basically how you can tell the difference. I mean, a female leopard's track is probably only about the size of my finger. A female's lion track is probably about the size of, at least up to my palm, maybe halfway to my fingers, like that. So that's the easiest thing to look for. It's sometimes confusing when there are cubs around, because the little lion cub's tracks are almost the same size as an adult male leopard's track. So if you only see one cub crossing the road, it's sometimes a bit tricky and it can be confusing, but you just look to see if you can find more tracks, and then you'll easily be able to figure it out after that. So whilst we're looking for this leopard, I'm sure everyone is still very excited to go and see what Tswalu and what has to offer and what Dylan might be looking for this afternoon. So let's send you across to him to say hello.
Look at the size of this nest, eh? Some of you may know what it is, may actually have even seen them before. These are sociable weavers that make these nests, and they are the largest nests of any bird in the world. You can get hundreds of individuals that actually contribute towards creating a nest this size. A nest this big obviously comes at a cost to the tree in some respects, and there's benefits in other respects. If you look on the right hand side of the tree at the bottom, look at this huge piece. It's actually collapsed, so it actually has broken the branch completely off with the weight of the nest. And that could be, you know, the actual weight of the nest itself. But if you get a big storm, you get rain coming in, water soaking into that nest, the mass of that is absolutely incredible. So there's this kind of long-term pruning effect on these old trees. But there's also benefits. Obviously, if you've got a colony like this, there's a lot more nutrients going into the ground underneath the tree. Some guano for those who are interested. Look at those droppings. Minus the twigs. But that's some of their nesting material. Some of the larger pieces there, but then all these bird droppings. So that tree, even though it's getting branches broken off occasionally, it's also getting a huge amount of nutrients pumped into it. And one of our researchers recently did some measurements on the leaves, and it turns out these camel thorn trees with the nests, the individual leaflets tend to be slightly larger than camel thorn trees without nests. So obviously then there's a larger area for photosynthesis and you know, so there are advantages and disadvantages to this. I always think of the poor tree, you know, when that first weaver lands with the first piece of grass, what does that tree think, eh? Oh my God, no, stop, no, go to the next tree. Beautiful nest, though. But over the coming days, we're going to talk a lot about these nests, and I'm also looking for other animals that are associated with these weaver nests. You get things like Cape cobras that often stay in these nests and predate on these birds. You can get genets that live inside these nests because they form all these crazy shapes, you know, following the branches. You often get these little hollowed out areas, these sheltered areas. And I've had barn owls nesting in them. I've had spotted eagle owls nesting in there, genets, you know, residing in there. I've seen African wildcats. In fact, we've even had leopards taking kills up on top of these nests before. And we've got cheetah that the guides have seen regularly. One particular coalition that's got a habit of actually climbing up these trees. And cheetah can climb trees, not nearly as adept as leopards, but they can go, especially if there's a bit of an angle to the trunk. And these guys actually climb up into the tree and they start scent marking on top of these nests. And the guiding team has seen that on a regular basis. I've seen it myself a couple of times as well when I've been out. And so over time, I've checked this nest now. I didn't see any obvious sign of cobras or anything else. But, you know, as over the next couple of days when we get to nest, we'll ferret around and hopefully we can produce something like that for you guys. Ryan, I love those kind of questions. And you hear it so often. You hear about the Kalahari Desert, but if you look around us, you can see it's clearly not a desert, and it is correctly a semi-arid savanna, which means it's a savanna in dry areas. And there's not a huge amount to distinguish between a savanna and a woodland, and many people actually regard them as the same thing. So yeah, this is a savanna with certain areas going into dense woodland. But the beauty with Tswalu is this area is so vast, it actually encompasses so many different kinds of habitat, and that you'll see over the coming weeks. We'll be traversing areas that look completely different to what we're seeing now. And you can see the mountains that we've got in the background over here as well. So the habitats are so diverse, and there's different animals that use these different habitats for different purposes. But it's all beautiful. Well, let's head on. Well, while we're ferreting around for funny things at Weaver Nest, let's head over to David. They also are seeing what they can scrounge out on their side, so let's hold thumbs for them.
Well, turns out the monkey alarms were for nothing that we could find on the cat side. We circled that whole area twice, didn't see any tracks. So perhaps it was just a snake. They'll often alarm quite loudly for snakes. Even something smaller like a serval or like another kind of predator that they would not normally think would alarm them so much. But they do. They're very noisy animals and they want to be. So we've moved on. We're going to head down the Muati. See what else we can find today. Speaking of another animal that alarm calls, let's send you over to Tristan with the squirrel.
Indeed, we do have an animal alarm calling. I'm going to keep quiet for a bit so you can hear it. Now these guys get very, very upset, and this is them shouting. Now when you've got monkeys in an area alarm calling and squirrels start alarm calling, it's always good to double check in those areas, particularly when the squirrel is alarm calling in a very leopardy spot. We're in the Mulawati at the moment. We heard this squirrel alarm call, and so we came down here to investigate what's going on. And this is an area where our leopards absolutely love. They've all spent time in this general area. It's thick, it's dense, it's shady, and it's the perfect place for a leopard to hide out. And so it's a worthwhile place to check. Squirrels, unfortunately, aren't the most reliable in that they shout at each other as well as birds of prey and other things, but he's very, very upset. So we're going to just have a little look around this section, and we're going to try and figure out if there is something that's here. It's kind of facing away from us a little bit, so I just want to drive around. We'll still get a view of him and see if maybe, just maybe, I can find something on the other side of the tree that maybe is walking around here. It would make sense because we're not very far from where those monkeys were alarm calling. If that leopard walked and it went down into this riverbed, this is roughly where it would be. It would like this kind of a section. Kalamba used to love walking in here. In fact, when she was a tiny, tiny little baby, this is one of the places that she was kept. All right, Alex, you're gonna have to be careful here. There's a big stump on my left, so I can't go any further. What we're going to do is try and just get that out the way. You right there, Alex? I'm getting covered in mud because the Ellies have walked there after mud bathing and the whole branch is covered in mud. Alright, so let's just check very carefully here. You never ever know. Our squirrel is very upset, and the fact that it's still shouting even with us here. Generally, when it's a territorial dispute between squirrels, when you drive there, they start to keep quiet, they start to settle down. But when it's something that they're really nervous of, then they shout. And it could be something like an owl, it could be a bird of prey that's like an eagle that flew over. But like I say, when you just take the monkeys into account and the squirrel shouting, it's really worth just checking around and making sure. Now I know on top here is not going to be where that leopard is, because there is very relaxed impalas on that side that are just feeding. They're not in any way stressed or looking in this direction. So I know that probably in all likelihood our leopard hasn't gone that way. If there is a leopard, it would be more this side. So we need to just check very carefully in all these areas and just make sure it's not sitting in one of these thickets somewhere here. But I suspect if the monkeys stop shouting that the leopard is moving, it's not sitting still. Okay, so nothing this side, but you can see lots of little places for them to hide in these little thickets. So you've got to just look carefully, especially because it's quite a warm day, and warm days often mean that they lie up in the shade, and that can make it actually harder to see them. All these trees have broken. It never used to be so difficult to get in here, but there's so many broken trees. I wonder if it's maybe not still facing this way. Squirrel, what are you shouting at? I love a bush mystery, so I always like to try and figure out what's going on. I wonder, like I say, if it's not an owl maybe sitting somewhere here. Luke, who's 7 years old, you're asking if the tree squirrels are natural to South Africa. Yes, they are. They are 100% natural in this area. We don't get any other species of squirrel in this particular section. It's just these guys that sit in the trees, and they're quite small compared to many of the squirrels in the rest of the world, but they need to be in order to get up trees and away from predators pretty quickly. They need to be quick and fast and nimble, and so the bigger you are, the harder it is. But still very upset. What's wrong, squirrel? It's moved a little bit now. It's gone to the kind of left of that branch. There he is. Okay, he's gone quiet for the first time, but still staring in this general direction. Alright, let me see if I can find another thing here somewhere that... I'm just looking at all the trees, trying to figure out if there's another squirrel, because sometimes they'll shout at other squirrels, but generally when that happens, the other squirrel shouts back at them. What are you shouting at? I don't see anything. It's not to say that there isn't something sitting right here. It's, like I say, quite thick, so you just have to look out very carefully. Miles, who's 5 years old, do we get mambas in our reserve? And if we did, would the squirrels shout at them? An alarm call. So the answer to that is yes and yes. So we do get black mambas here. We don't get green mambas, but we get black mambas. Quite a lot of them, actually. And if a squirrel saw it, it would most definitely alarm call. They know that snakes are predators of theirs, and so they do shout at snakes. So it could very well be a snake. It could be a puff adder, or a mamba, or a python, or something like that, and I'm just missing it because it's small. It's very, very possible. Anything that eats a squirrel, they will shout at. So that's birds, snakes, leopards, lions, cheetahs, wild dogs, anything like that will potentially trigger a squirrel to start shouting. and so that's why they're not the most reliable. But like I say, when you have monkeys alarm calling in an area, squirrels alarm calling in places where you know leopards like to move in the heat of the day, it's always worth investigating. Sometimes it is just a snake, and the snake is somewhere close to where I am right now. I just can't see it because most snakes are incredibly well camouflaged, and the squirrel might have seen the movement and we haven't, and that's why it could be shouting. So that is very possible, but it's always worth investigating and just making 100% sure. I can't see anything, if I'm to be honest. I suspect it's somewhere close by, whatever it is. Just listening to see if there's any birds. The one good thing about something like a leopard is if it's moving, what it does is as it moves, it triggers a chain of alarm calls. So while this squirrel will shout, if the leopard moves away, then maybe a bird starts to shout, then another squirrel, then another bird or an animal, and that's going to help you figure out what the animal is and how it's moving. If it's just quiet like this and the squirrel is shouting and there's no other things alarm calling, then generally it means that the animal is close by and lying down. It's not moving too much, and therefore not triggering all of those other animals to start alarm calling. Okay, I'm going to keep having a little look around and try and see what's happening. In the meantime, though, I'm going to send you back up to Eric. Seems like he's had some luck already this afternoon.
Welcome back, everyone. We're trying to look for tracks of that male leopard, but unfortunately we couldn't find any. So we decided to come and check the last position where we had that young male lion from this morning, and he is pretty much in exactly the same spot. He's moved a total of 2 or 3 meters, and he's looking up. I'm sure there might be a vulture or something passing by that he's just keeping an eye on. And in a time like that, or time like this, vultures are something that he'll pay quite close attention towards, and he'll be able to identify a vulture. And I mean, behind us I can at least see 1, 2, 3, 4 of them actually quite far in the distance. Doesn't look like they're dropping now, but if they do start to drop, there's a very good chance that they've found something to feed on. So there'll be a dead carcass somewhere. And in the condition that he's in at the moment, he'll rely heavily on that. And so he'll be pretty interested in their movements. And you can see he's keeping an eye on them. So it's quite amazing. I mean, even these lions will be able to identify a certain bird species. I'm sure they can see the different flight patterns and probably more of the behavior than actually identifying the feathers like we do. But it looks like these vultures have started circling. I'll keep an eye on them. It does look to me like it's more of a thermal. I don't see any of them dropping rapidly yet. So we'll keep an eye on it. We haven't really seen his leg this afternoon, so I'm sure the condition of his leg hasn't really changed. But I mean, he's looking okay, I guess. Beautiful backlight on the edge of his mane over there. That's just accentuating that gold around his head. He's been sleeping and resting in the middle of the day. Now, Camden, you are 8 years old and you're asking if big cats keep their families nearby, and they definitely do, Camden. This guy is a little bit different. So lions will usually live in a group, so it will be their mothers and sometimes their fathers if they're around, and then all of the cubs. It gets to the point it looks like he's taking a rest. But Camden, it gets to the point where the males won't be really accepted within the pride anymore for a number of reasons, but they eat a lot of food without really competing or helping at least provide for the pride. And then sorry, I've lost my train of thought. So the male lion will basically not really help with hunting. And then also one of the big things is that he can potentially, when he becomes sexually mature, he'll want to try and mate with the females and his sisters, basically. So he gets chased away, and that's why he's by himself at the moment. So he's not really part of a pride yet, and so he will be trying to keep the family as close as possible. But I mean, the big males are probably in the process of chasing him away, and that's how he's got this injury. And so he's pretty much for the next couple of years, if his leg recovers, will be by himself. Now, hopefully, if that leg becomes good and healthy again, he will hopefully be able to find his way into a pride and start a family in his own. And that will probably be in the next 2 or 3 years or so. If we do have any new viewers this afternoon, this is a young male lion who was part of the pride that we see a lot around Nyala. And he, up until very recently, was moving around with his mothers and his aunties, and the 2 dominant males, who actually aren't his father, were tolerating him up until this point, basically. And it seems like he's been in a very big fight, and the 2 dominant males managed to injure him quite badly. And on his back left leg, he seems to have got quite a bad injury. And we suspect it's either fractured, maybe broken. And so he's not really putting too much pressure on it. But, I mean, we found him 2 weeks ago. This is maybe the 3rd or the 4th time that we've seen him, and he was deteriorating at a rapid rate. And then luckily 2 or 3 days later, 2 or 3 days ago, we found him with a very, very full belly. So he managed to find some food somehow. And it seems like he's slowly but surely starting to recover. And so it's still a very long road for him, but if he gets to the point where that wound starts to heal and he can start putting more and more pressure on that leg, he might be able to be a bit more mobile, and that will help him in the future. And he'll be doing a lot of this now, so he'll be watching those vultures. He's obviously decided that the vultures aren't a threat, and I mean, as I look back, they've all gone. And so he'll be just conserving as much energy as he possibly can. Now, Ashwin, you're 10 years old and you're asking how big lions can get. And so this male lion is roughly 4 years old. And so he's pretty soon going to get as big as he will get. So within maybe about 1.5 to 2 years. So, I mean, when he's 5.5, 6 years old is probably the biggest that he'll get. And in terms of weight, he'll probably, if he's got a nice full belly, he'll probably weigh close to the region of 200 to 220 kilograms. So that's, call it 450 pounds. And then the females will probably be about 50 kilograms less than that. So between 150 to 180 kilograms. So 300 to 380 pounds or so. And they are definitely the largest cat that we get in Africa. They get ginormous, and you don't really appreciate the size of them until you get the opportunity to see them up close. I mean, that front paw of his, I was mentioning a little bit earlier, but that paw is roughly about the same size as a fully grown adult's hand. And they've just got so much strength. They're probably as long as us. And I mean, they weigh 2.5 times a normal person would. So they've got some incredible strength and power behind them. I'm surprised that he's decided to lie in the sun at this time. I mean, it's still fairly warm, and we're sitting in the sun ourselves and we're feeling hot. We've got a much more effective way of cooling ourselves down than this lion does, and they usually will move into the shade to try and recover, or at least cool down and escape the heat. And he's not far. I mean, he's maybe 2 or 3 meters to the right of or to the left of the shade. We are going to be sticking around here for a little bit more, just to see if we can show you any updates on what that leg of his is doing and how it's recovering maybe. But in the meantime, we'll send you across to Tswalu to see what they're up to. Yossi.
Yeah, so it's been fairly quiet on our side. We are actually making our way to there's a report of a Kudu bull. There were actually 2 Kudu bulls that got their horns interlocked, and it happens. We see it occasionally with red hartebeest and Kudu. Those are the 2 species that it occurs most frequently with on Tswalu. And these territorial bulls, these big bulls, they fight and they get their horns locked. And in this case, quite sad, the one bull actually died, and the other one managed to break free and move off. So we're going to go head over across that way and just see maybe there's some interesting activity around there, scavengers or, but anyway, we'll get there and we'll have a look and see what's up there. But at the moment, Andre and I, we've just been scanning in the distance along the hill, see if we can pick up any mountain zebra. And then closer by, there's an old burrow system over here with a python that lives in this area, and he's frequently seen around here. This morning was very cool, but this afternoon has actually warmed up nicely, and this is exactly the kind of temperature now when a snake would be out basking and that before sunset. So, but no luck yet, but we're going to keep on going, keep on trying. The Riggsy Tswalu is a reserve, in many respects similar to Nkuhuma and Nyala, but we're actually far away from them. In a straight line distance, I'd estimate probably 700 to 800 kilometers away in the Kalahari. So our environment here is very, very different. It's a lot drier, we get a lot less rainfall, and our landscapes are very, very different as well. So yeah, it's so nice having you with, and that's an interesting question in terms of the reserve and how it works and that. So, but let's head along here and see what we can pick up. Jonna, so the Kalahari is a massive area, and it extends from the northern areas of South Africa, that's where we are, where Tswalu is located, right up through Botswana, Namibia, southern Angola, and actually looking at the sand that we're driving on, parts of this actually go right up into Zaire. So, but what we typically regard as Kalahari is what you're seeing here, and this is South Africa, Namibia, Botswana. And you can get to Tswalu by road. It's obviously a long way from anywhere, but very, very easily manageable. Cape Town, Joburg. But then most of people that come to visit Tswalu actually fly in. So it's not difficult at all. It's actually very, very accessible. There are other areas of the Kalahari in central Botswana that are a lot more difficult to get to, and it'll take a bit more time, but also well worth visiting. It's a remarkable environment. So we're going to carry on heading and see if we can find that dead kudu. But in the meantime, let's head over to David and see what they've got on their side.
Just stopped here at a young knobthorn tree. I thought it was a pretty cool example of why it's called a knobthorn. Often we look at the big ones and confused as to why it's called a knobthorn. Now you can really see these knobs, and on the tip of the knob is a very sharp thorn. So on the younger trees like this, it's very prevalent. You see their knobs very readily. On the older trees, can you see that one there, BK? That big knob thorn over there. If you zoom in on the bark, you'll see that there's not really that many knobs at all. Because that tree's already reached the age where it should be safe from damage by normal browsers. You will still get knobs in the upper branches as the younger branches push out, but not nearly as much as when it's a younger tree. So same species, but very different in bark and appearance. The younger species having the knobs on it. Sorry, the younger tree having the knobs on it because it's at more risk of getting damaged. This one we just looked at here in the beginning has been broken by an elephant though, so his knobs helped him absolutely nothing. You can see here it's all dead. It got broken at the top, and the elephant just stood here and broke it over with his trunk. So this knobthorn's not going to grow anymore, but there's lots of other knobthorns around. But that one got damaged by an elephant. Look at this marula tree, talking about elephant damage. It's been completely smashed. And now you may be wondering why on earth there's a fence around a tree in the middle of the bush. It's something that management has been doing in recent years in reserves with our very high elephant population. We've been experiencing major losses in our large trees because, as you know, elephants eat a lot and they like to debark trees. So what management's done is they've gone and put wire around it in the hopes of protecting it. Obviously this tree was already damaged before they put the wire on. There's still a little bit of bark at the back which is keeping the tree alive. Still got a pathway of nutrients from the roots up to the leaves, and they're hoping that the wire will protect it from future. Obviously it's just a bit of a dissuasion. This wire would be easily broken by an elephant, but I suppose the thinking is an elephant gets here and thinks, what on earth is this? This is not very nice, doesn't taste nice. It's probably more of a mission than it's worth, so they move on. I think it works pretty well. They've also experimented with bees. A mate of mine does bees, where they hang beehives in a tree. And that seems to be working pretty well as well. Elephants seem to leave the trees alone that have bees in them. Bees, for some reason, really scare elephants. Elephants hate bees. They, I don't know why, the sound of a bee or a swarm of bees makes elephants run. It's actually quite comical thinking a massive elephant is so scared of a tiny little bee. So lots of interesting theories and methods and experiments in conservation, but it's all part of as we grow, and it's all part of what it takes to keep evolving with the way our natural wildlife and conservation of it is going. So interesting stuff. Speaking of the birds and the bees, let's go to a small creature with Tristan.
Indeed, a small creature, but a very, very tricky one to see if you're not paying attention. We luckily happened to drive by and managed to see it just because it was on the edge of this massive, massive jackalberry, and you can see how well camouflaged they are. If you're not paying attention when you drive past, you don't see these. Now, I mean, that's wise words. I'm telling myself I wasn't paying attention this morning, so it seems a bit ironic that I'm saying that. But yes, these guys require a little bit of effort to spot, particularly the females that lack the blue head. Males are a lot easier when they've got their bright blue head and running around a tree. You can't miss them. But these guys, a little bit more tricky because their skin color and scale colors perfectly match the bark of trees, and it makes life so much easier to be able to see the males than them. And there's a reason, obviously, to be camouflaged. There's a lot of things that eat lizards out here, so it's a good way to do things. And as the name suggests, typically on trees. But before we get more in depth with our agama, it is that time where lots of you will be joining, because it is the regular part of our afternoon, where we will be answering your questions. So it's a very warm welcome to all the adults that have joined us. For the kids that were watching and are continuing watching, remember, you guys can still send your questions through, but for all the adults, #WildEarth or @FC on the YouTube chat stream. And we'll try and answer as much as possible and try and get through as many questions as we can. It's always so nice when you guys engage with us. But this is also being a rather accommodating agama. Sometimes they're not quite as accommodating as this. They see you and then go running up the tree and away from us and disappear. But this one is catching some late afternoon rays on the side of this jackalberry, and it's amazing to see how big this jackalberry actually is. This little lizard is dwarfed by this tree, and so are we. If we come all the way out, you can see just how big a home it's got. This is like the $1 million Agama. It's got the penthouse suite on the Mulawati River. This is what is equivalent of a mansion if you're in the Agama world. It is probably one of the bigger jackalberries we've got in this area. So one could probably say this is a celebrity Agama now that it's made its TV debut. It's got the house, it's got everything. So we'll have to come up with a name for this Agama that we can have a chuckle at, because we've got Tom Selleck the hippo. We had Janet Jackson for a while as well. Higgy asking if tree agamas are related to bearded dragons. Sorry, I'm laughing not because of your question, but because Alex found Janet Jackson very funny. Have you never heard of Janet Jackson, Alex? Yeah, well, there was a Janet that we used to see, and we called her Janet Jackson. We think it was a her, it might have been a boy, and we thought Jackson would cover either one anyway. So, yeah, well, I mean, a lizard is a lizard. They are related in some way. It's not the exact same family, but, you know, it's a lizard, and so lizards do lizardy things, and it has a very similar anatomical structure. So I guess you could say, yes, it is related to a bearded dragon in some way. Okay, Alex, I think our Agama has been tired of being called a celebrity and us judging it on its accommodation, so we'll leave it there. I don't know why I'm being so full of nonsense this afternoon. I really shouldn't be. FC has decided on a name. All right, hit me with it, guys. What have you got for me? No. I don't. Emma is saying that we should call it Prince because its jacket, well, its skin looks like a little jacket that Prince would wear. But that doesn't rhyme. You have to have something that rhymes and has a little bit of alliteration. You know, we've got to go with something with an A, I think. We've got to find somebody that is reptilian in looks and has an A for a name, and then we can have a little bit of fun with words, I think. That's what I'm going to go for. I can't think of anybody with A at this stage that would go with the Agama. Come on, Rusty, up you go. Agama name, so we'll have to ask all of you guys to help us out as we try and see if we can find an animal now that we've left our Agama. George K and Jick K, wild cats hunt Agamas. I would imagine yes. Cats in general, even leopards, will hunt Agamas. I've seen a leopard kill one and eat it. So a wild cat, if it could get to one, would certainly do it. Anything that they can overpower, generally cats will take. Whether it be lizard, rodent, mammal, that is bigger than them even sometimes, it doesn't really matter. They're pretty adaptable when it comes to that. So wildcats, yes, so they take geckos and other things. So a tree Agama would be part of that diet. I'm sure some of you are wondering if we had any updates with our squirrel search. We didn't find anything. We had some of Franklin's that alarm called, but I checked around, no tracks anywhere. So now I'm just slowly coasting to Chitwa to try and see if I can find the lions, because the lions, well, they must be still recovering from the shunning they got this morning by me. Those of you that weren't watching this morning, and even some of you that were, that missed the whole thing. Essentially, I was driving along talking about leopards, and there was this blinding light coming from this side. And if you actually watch the whole segment, parts of it, I'm kind of got my hand out because I'm trying to see what's going on. You can ask Alex, it wasn't exactly comfortable looking down the road. Not that this is an excuse in any way, shape or form, because it's not. But anyway, it was this kind of blinding light, and I was watching tracks on the road and just literally drove past this lioness who was sitting right here on my right-hand side. It's actually hilariously funny when you look at the photo, and we completely missed it and only really was notified by one of you eagle-eyed viewers that were watching, and that I had driven past the lion once I'd got back to camp. And I had to chuckle. At first I thought it was photoshopped. I was like, no, there's no ways. Then I went back and actually watched it. And between the breakup, you can very clearly see that there is a lion. So For those of you that missed it, if you have a look over here, it looks very obvious, and it is indeed very, very obvious, but that's me not paying attention at all, and that is a lioness watching me drive past with the look of like, what are you doing, you moron? I am right here, you've been tracking me, and yet you can't see me at all. So there is a look of disdain from the Nkuhuma lioness, and the funny part about this, or I suppose the disconcerting part, is the walking past her. I mean, I walked later, as we stopped the vehicle, about 20 odd seconds later, 30 seconds later, got out the car and walked along this very road, and I must have walked past her, down the road, back again, and then drove around the block, got out the car and walked straight through this gap and didn't see her. Oops. Not very good guiding, I must be honest. Not ideal. So I'm trying to think of maybe I must start heading to a optometry, get my checked, because that was a heinous piece of guiding. Okay, apparently we were changing the subject back to our Agama, which is a good thing. I can escape the humiliation now, luckily. I'm sure the viewers are laughing at me, Vandeka. I have no doubt. I would be laughing at me too. In fact, the first person I sent it to was Steve and said, I'm in your club, and then followed by Taylor. When all I got from Taylor was a hysterical voice note laughing, which I thought was pot calling kettle black in some respects, since she had a very similar incident with a leopard. And so, kind of ironic that she was laughing. I'm using just tight tail, so hopefully it stays with us and we don't lose any more. What are the we've got a bit of this issue to address the names. In the meantime, I'm going to send you to Tswalu Kalahari and see how things going this afternoon.
So I've got my own question this time for the viewers. My question is this. Have any of you got an idea? There's two questions here. We have this little indentation in the ground here, and we have this indentation in the ground. Any ideas, any suggestions? I'm open to them. I can give clues if needed. While you're thinking about that, here's a little jackal track as well. I'll circle it. There you go. And he's going that direction. Looks like a small dog track. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 little pads on the front, and then the back pad over here. That's a jackal trotting that direction. No takers yet. Quiz number 1. Anushka, you're a winner. This is exactly an antlion. Very, very good. I'm impressed. We have that other one as well that I need an answer for. But before we go further, just on antlions, so we've got researchers that have been collecting different species of antlion and lacewing on Tswalu, and we've got over 40 different species now, which is actually a higher number than most other areas in South Africa, just incidentally. And we're sitting in this, what people traditionally see as this kind of low diversity area, and yet he has just one group of insects with a higher diversity than other areas in South Africa. So I mean, that just out of interest. So there's something very special about that one. Any guesses as to this one? I'll give viewers a little clue. I'm not going to disturb it, but I'll give a little clue. It would be a very small dinosaur if it was. Thank you, but good point. But watch carefully. Here comes the clue. I need a taker now. Come on. You know, that's exactly right. It's a spider. But this one is interesting. All spiders are interesting. Everything out here is interesting. They're all cool. But this one, I don't know if you saw that. When I put the little piece of grass there, the little spider came out. But it actually sits upside down underneath. So this is its web. Okay, so it makes a tunnel in the sand. And then it lines that tunnel with silk. And then it makes this beautiful... we actually call it a buck spur spider because it looks like an antelope or a buck that's walked like that shape. So we call it a buck spur spider. And this is the female. So she actually lives inside there. She'll lay eggs inside there. But she uses this web to actually hunt. So she sits, she hangs underneath on the web. And then if any little insect or, insects actually come walking along and she feels that vibration on the edge of a web, she runs out and grabs it. So, well done. Good spotting there. And that was, I just want to point out, that was Jandre that spotted this, not me. Credit where credit is due. So well done. So let's leave these two little guys in peace. But it just shows there's an area 20 centimeters by 20 centimeters, and we've got jackal tracks, you've got a spider, you've got antlion, there's actually a little ant nest here as well. There's grass seeds, there's little plants. That's a tiny little area on what you would think at first glance is, it's just bare sand, there's nothing there, don't worry about it. So yeah, so there's a lot of life out here, and a lot of that life is underground. Oh, tree. Oh, Sheila, I'm glad it's a new one. And if you're interested in spiders, I can start pointing out all sorts of funny little spiders. The challenge with these things is the diversity is so high in any area that you go to, anywhere in the world. And there's so few experts that work on these things. So often if you get a photograph of a spider and you'll send it in, unless it's something that's fairly common, they'll normally come back and say, well, this is the family that it belongs to, and if you're lucky, this is the genus. But to get accurate identification down to species level on spiders can be quite difficult, as it is with a lot of the insects. But that also just highlights how much there is still to learn out in these environments, and not just here, but at Ngala and Nkuhuma, anywhere you go, it's just there's still a world of things out there. So I think we're gonna move on for real this time to try to find that kudu carcass, and but I think let's head over to Nyala, and the chaps there are still following up on that lion. So let's have a look what they've got, and good luck. Hope they get them.
This male lion hasn't done too much. He has picked up his head again, which is really cool. And myself and Owen were both saying that we might have heard lions calling in the distance, but I'm not entirely sure if it was lions that we were hearing. He might have reacted slightly differently if he had heard lions. He might have gotten up and started walking straight towards them. So whatever we heard might have just been a long distance noise that maybe we couldn't distinguish, and so he just picked up his head to have a look. Directly behind us, maybe by about 200 meters or so, is pretty much the last remaining water within this Timbavati riverbed. And so, I mean, it's not impossible for animals to start coming down to drink. And I'm sure, I mean, he's more than likely going to put his head down again and have another rest. But I just love the way that the sun is just getting lower and lower behind him, which is creating this golden rim around his face. So that backlighting is just absolutely beautiful. It's really cool. I mean, you can really see that his mane has still got quite a lot to develop. He's smelling into the wind. Just look at the grass around you. All of a sudden the wind has picked up. So now he's testing the wind and smelling. He's starting, it looks like he's getting a lot more active. He quickly spun his head around as one or two francolins or spurfowls we're calling. All of a sudden a really nice breeze. Big yawn. I wonder if he's going to get up. I was just saying about his mane, it looks like he's got a lot of growing to do. I mean, he's just got this funky mohawk at the moment in between his ears, and so there's a lot of mane that needs to be filled out. And he's cleaning himself, he's showing us all of the signs. Very cool mohawk. Another big yawn. This is really good signs. So let's see, I mean, that water, like I mentioned, is just around the corner. He himself might even want to go and have something to drink. It's always so exciting to see cats behaving like this with the yawning and the grooming. It's always a good indication that they could looks like a bit of mane is stuck on his tongue. Having said that, I don't know how often it happens when we say this and we say these lions are definitely going to move, and then they move 5 meters and collapse for another 2 hours. Jay Shri, you're asking the best time of year to come on safari, and I would have to say now would be a really, really good time. And I love the change in seasons, and so we've still got really, really nice warm days, but the mornings and the evenings are getting very cold. And then instead of the lush greens of the bush that we're so used to in the last 4 or 5 months, everything is turning, and so we're getting these beautiful different shades of color. We're getting yellows, oranges, reds, water's drying up, so we tend to see a slightly higher concentration of animals around the 1 or 2 remaining water holes in this area. The animals tend to be slightly more active when it's cooler. So this for me, or at least the change in seasons, is really, really beautiful. So now, May to June would be a really good time. And then even September, when we're coming out of the dry winter months, when all of a sudden we start to get rain and the green just starts appearing out of nowhere. That's also special, especially when the animals start dropping their youngsters. So to see massive herds of nursery impalas, wildebeest even, it's really special. But any time of the year is good, and you'll see most of the animals throughout the whole year. I guess it just depends. If you're into your birding, then September to May is probably your best time to come. If you into your large cats and them being active, wintertime might be slightly better because there's more chance of them moving around. There's less leaves in the trees, so it's sometimes a bit easier to see 5-10 meters into the bush, which might give you a better chance of spotting them. Okay, so, I mean, we are going to stick around for a little bit longer and maybe just wait for the temperature to drop. If he doesn't move within the next 10-15 minutes, we might start making our way into the last area that his sister was seen. But in the meantime, we're going to send you over to Tristan. Apparently he's got a new addition to his cap.
I do indeed. I've decided, because I was terrible at finding lions earlier, I've made some improvements to my driving style. One is to drive slowly, and the second is to add some binoculars so that I can see better. Not that I can see anything close, but it should work quite well if we look a little bit further in the distance. Driving is a little bit challenging, I must be honest, but we're managing so far. Alex has been quite good at directing me as to where I need to go. But I tell you what, my long distance vision is sterling at this stage. I can see quite far, which is wonderful. The problem is that it makes you feel a little bit sick if you turn your head to scan from side to side. So I might have to rework my system, but it certainly gives me a better depth of where I'm looking. And I shouldn't miss the lions, I don't think, if I have these on. It's not the most comfortable, I must be honest, but this is better. Now if I hold it like this, Alex, I feel like this is better, although I can feel I'm going off the road on the left a little bit. But I think I've done all right to go as straight as I have. What do you think, Alex? I think I'm doing okay, eh? So basically this is my new plan, is hopefully I'll be able to spot the animals and they won't get past me. The problem is that maybe it's not the best idea for driving. I'm going to need to come up with a slimmer set than these. These are a little bit bulky at the moment. No, sorry, Lindeke, if you can just repeat. I can't see a thing, so I'm going to have to just lift them up. But you see, if you just want to go normal, then you just lift them up. It's the perfect addition. It is Darth Vader. Although I think Darth Vader's helmet was far more ergonomically designed. This is a little bit of a makeshift. This is version 1.0. We'll have to work on it a little bit for me to get this right. But you know, has got ease of use. It's just, you know, an effect where I can just knock it down and then just pick it back up again, look at you guys and knock it back down, and I can scan around. Very, very easy to use. Maybe this can be my new career choice when I leave after my stint here. Maybe I can keep myself busy during this time of lockdown. New AD, yes, it's exactly right. It's a wonderful system. There's no escaping us now. I can see all the way to Botswana. Like I say to you, if there's anything that's close by, so looking at you guys on camera, very odd, because I can't even see where the camera is. I think it's somewhere over here, but I feel like they're good. They just need a bit of adjustment. They're sitting a little low. I think if I can get them to hold like this, then I'm going to be winning. And then, because if I have them like this, then driving is actually not too bad. But it's when they start to fall down, then things become a little bit more complicated. And all I can see then is the bonnets of the vehicle. But there we go. Oh no, it slipped. I'm going to have to come up with a way. There we go. Ridiculous. I don't even know why I'm doing this, but it seemed funny at the time. Hopefully you're all entertained at this stage. Bird watching would have to actually put your binos there. You could just quickly pull them down and just go. I feel like I'm onto something. Cap binos. They'd have to be a lot lighter. Oh look, I've spotted an animal down in the distance. An animal down in the distance. Alex, there's a Nyala. My binos have won the day. I've already done better than I did this morning. I can't see the screen to see what you're actually looking at, but there was a Nyala that crossed the road. It's gone now. Let me get down. Is there another one? Oh, excellent. Ah, there we go. I can see with my binos so nicely. Binocular vision is the way forward. Oh, a little baby one. That's cute. All right, let's go down. Tony, the OptiCap, I like it. Tony, maybe we should go into business. You can come up with the ideas and marketing strategy, and I'll find... Okay, right, this is ridiculous. I'm going to have a car accident at some point. Is that a squirrel or a dwarf mongoose? Oh, there we go. OptiCap. Oh, it's a squirrel that ran away. For a second there, I thought it was a dwarf mongoose in the tree. I was very confused by that. Okay, I'm going to continue down the road. While I continue down the road towards where the lions were, let's send you, I think we're sending you to David, and see how he's been faring this afternoon.
Welcome back. BK and I have just stopped on a high point. Seeing if we can spot anything, any trees moving or sign of some other animal. Currently on the Chitwa property, just up from the dam. We'll probably head back down to the dam now. I've really been enjoying this property. Beautiful big trees, lovely massive marula trees. Speaking of marula trees, wouldn't mind some marula beer, but we're out of season. I have to wait till Feb for that. I wonder how many South Africans watching have combined pineapple, sugar and yeast. I should be quite interested. Apparently our price of pineapples has skyrocketed during our lockdown. We are a resilient bunch of South Africans. Not seeing anything, BK. Let's carry on then. Lone wolf, you've asked what is considered very cold where we are. And to us, very cold is probably around 5 degrees Celsius. Doesn't get to freezing, maybe once in a blue moon in this neck of the woods. But in other parts of South Africa it will, but here in the low veld, doesn't really get that cold. Anything under 10 degrees Celsius we consider very cold.
Are there any possible vehicles on Fort Road?
Well, this afternoon, it's a nice sunny afternoon. It's not cold at all, no jacket required. Maybe later, as soon as that big golden ball in the sky goes down, we're going to have to put on our jackets. We'll get nice and chilly. Speaking about another place that can get very chilly, let's send you over to Tswalu with its beautiful red sand.
Well, at least it's not chilly at Tswalu this afternoon, but we're in for it in the next couple of days. So we are still on the way to the Kudu. Yes, we're not there yet, but we almost. Give us 3 minutes, we're going to be there, and then Yandre and I, we're just going to sit there as long as it takes, because I'm really hoping that we get, if we're lucky, some jackals coming in, maybe a hyena. With these nice mild temperatures, they can even be active during daylight hours, so let's hold thumbs. But it's a magnificent afternoon, I mean, ciao. One of the viewers mentioned earlier, they said he thinks I've got the best job in the world. Well, I can tell you I do. Muriel, correct, we do get hartebeest at Tswalu. These are red hartebeest that we get here, and we should see some over the next couple of days. I'm glad you mentioned that. I'll just keep my eyes peeled if we get any. At this time of year, you'll often get the big bulls moving around by themselves, and they almost like the color of the sand, this rich orangey red color. So Kudu should be somewhere on the right over here. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but it should be somewhere on the right hand side of the road. So we'll just keep, Yandra and I will just keep our eyes peeled here. We actually see bat-eared foxes regularly. It's quite a common species here. The one challenge that we have, and you'll see when we do see them, is they're not very large animals. I mean, these guys are, an adult stands about that high off the ground. Okay, they got big ears and that. But if Yandre sort of just looks through the grass over here, you'll see a bat-eared fox doesn't stand out just because of his size amongst grass like this. So with this vegetation cover, you often just get these little ears bobbing along in that. But we might be lucky and get them in the open, so we'll keep watching out for that. Good one. I don't know if any of you can see it on the screen there. There's the Kudu bull. From where we're sitting here, it's about 50 yards in at 1 o'clock to the vehicle. Can have a look at binoculars there. I see there's been a lot of feeding activity on the hindquarters. So I think it'll be well worth just sitting here patiently a little bit. The wind is in our favor, and hopefully we'll get some activity on this carcass. So that also just goes to show, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be predators that cause a mortality. Susie, hartebeest and wildebeest are different species, and you'll see when we actually get a visual of them the clear differences there. Wildebeest are larger, they're bigger, stronger animals, and they got these beautiful dark stripes. So it's almost a blue-grey color kind of animal with these dark stripes on it, and these long horns that go out and then up like that. Whereas the hartebeest is that beautiful orangey red color with black on the legs, and the horns make this unusual curved shape, and then they curl back at the top like that. But we'll see both of those. It's peaceful out here. So I think David has some Nyala out on their side, which are absolutely beautiful animals. So let's head over to him.
We do have two beautiful Nyala here, right up against the Chitwa Dam and Lodge. If you're wondering what the fence is, just curious, it almost looks like this bull is making moves on this female. He's resting his head on her rump and smelling very specifically. She may very well be in heat. And he is a fine bull, obviously dominant. He's beautiful, look at those horns and that face. When he displays his dominance around other bulls, he can erect that hair on his back and the hair under his belly. It's really an impressive display. as he struts around like a dressage horse. Notice the size difference between the female and the male. Jan, you've asked why do Nyala shake their tail so much, and I suppose it's probably flies and other insects that are congregating around the smelly end. They have to keep shaking their tails to keep them away. It's interesting, if I have it correctly, Nyala are the animal where it's the cut-off between the naming of the female and the male for bull, cow, ram, ewe. So with the smaller antelope, it's a ram is a male and a ewe is a female, and for larger animals like buffalo, for example, the bull is a male and the cow is a female. And with Nyala, these males are so large that they are called Nyala bulls, yet the female is called an Nyala ewe, not a cow. That may be slightly useless information, but I just thought it was interesting. You would not be at fault if you called it an Nyala cow or an Nyala ewe. He's looking a little bit forlorn. Maybe his attempts have been spurned. Beautiful animal. Jason, you asked, will a Nyala bull kill a predator with his horns, or will he take flight? And generally he'll always take flight from a predator. He wouldn't stop and duel or stop and fence. I suppose I'm using those words because you're referring to his horns. He wouldn't stop and fight. He would always flee from a predator. And if he did want to try and fight, he'd be no match to the agility of a leopard or a lion, for example. Now, of course, I'm sure it's happened in the past where one of those predators has jumped on its back and been injured by its horns, but that would have just been an unusual occurrence. Those horns, when they fight, are predominantly for when they fight other bulls, when they have fights over dominance. They'll clash horns and they'll push against one another. This normally happens when there's a female in heat. And generally, both bulls will come away with relatively minor injuries, but occasionally they can even be fatal. Those horns are very sharp. Well, let's go down to the dam and see what else we can find. I can immediately see 2 hippo. Let's pull up on the wall here so we can have a nice look at them. Christelle, you've asked, do Nyala mix and mingle with Kudu? And I have seen them with Kudu before. As you may know, it's a very small hippo. It's very cute. Little baby. It's like the size of a warthog. Shame. Christelle, as you may know, we do see many different species of antelope and herbivores together. And it wouldn't be unusual for Kudu and Nyala to mix. For them, it's always safety in numbers. The more eyes and ears, the better.
yours?
Just checking the back this time.
Must be Mom over to the right. I would assume. And there's plenty other hippo on the other side. Maybe she's keeping them, or keeping her and her calf separated. A fiercely protective mother that is, if you try to get between her and that calf. Sorry, FC, I didn't quite get that. There's a break up there. That beautiful fish eagle at the back there at those dead leadwood trees are making like a beautiful picture frame for you, BK. Miss Alamandus, you've commented, what a sleepy head, definitely. Looks very lazy. This fish eagle is much more alert than our baby hippo. Way over there. Looking around, perhaps waiting for a fish to break the surface. Become its next meal. If you zoom out a little bit, BK, it makes like a cool picture frame. Look at that. Perfectly framed. Ooh, very exciting news. Let's go to Tristan and see what it is.
Well, success. We didn't miss them this time. Although they haven't moved, to be honest. I'm still very unsure how we missed them the first time. But anyway, we found them this time. It's the Nkuhuma pride. Like I said, the scary part is that it's not just one line. There is 14 of them here. And so they were just lying literally, I mean, this is within 5 meters of where I walked, and I didn't see them. I walked on the other side of a little thicket that they're behind, and they obviously were just watching me come past. And I'm very, very, very surprised that I didn't get a single growl, hiss, tail whip, nothing, and especially because they have the cubs with them. I would have expected at least one of them to have growled at me, and they didn't. So they obviously just watched me walk past them, and were quite happy that I hadn't seen them, and then being ignorant to their position, and then kind of carried on with life. But I can't see all of them at the moment. I can only see 2 lionesses and a couple of the cubs that are around. You can just see another lioness tail flicking there. Unfortunately, they're inside, or just inside of the nets, so that's why I've parked quite far away, as we can't get any closer than what we are right now. But they look like they're starting to wake up a bit. Some of the females are standing and stretching, and that hopefully means that they're going to come up towards Chitwa airstrip and maybe try and see if they can find some food on the airstrip side. That would be ideal. But hello, girls. Sorry I drove past you this morning and didn't give you your 10 minutes of fame. My humblest apologies. They don't seem to be too fazed by it, do they? Seem like they've had a good day, just having a good rest. But at least we found them. Exciting that we have lions for the afternoon, that's for sure. Of course, this time of the day, generally lions are a little bit sleepy, but you can see that this one is just starting to have a bit of a groom now, and is having a slight little session of kind of getting maybe some suckling, and they'll do this while the females are still fairly stationary. You can see the shade is coming over them now, and so that should trigger them to start thinking about moving. It's going to get cooler quite quick, and I'm hoping if they haven't eaten that they're going to be fairly hungry, and that's going to make them stand up and go and scan these open clearings on Chitwa to see if there's any sign of wildebeest or impalas or kudu or zebras that potentially could hang around. Waterbuck is another one that hangs around here. And that's what I'm going to hope for as this starts to get a little bit cooler, that they come out. For now, though, they're doing what lions do best, which is have a really good sleep. Like I said, they haven't moved very far from this morning at all. I can't see all of them, but maybe they're underneath this weeping wattle on the right here. That'll be a nice shady tree. So I suspect some of them are hidden in that. But you can see why it's difficult. If you go wide on this particular shot, bar those two, or that cub that's got its head up, you can see on the left side there's actually a lioness sitting underneath a terminalia. So just to the left of those lines that we can see, and then there's probably about another 3 or 4 of them on the right side of them. But we can only just see the one with the cub, and it gives you an idea of just how camouflage lions can be. Their coloration, particularly in winter, in this wintry colored grass, is so good. I mean, you wouldn't know if you drove past there that there's lions. It's not an excuse or anything like that. I'm just pointing out how perfectly evolved they are to do what they do, and why lions in long grass are absolutely lethal to prey animals, because they just disappear and melt into that color of the grass. Their coat is so perfectly suited to it, and that's why they can be the most incredible hunters when they have the right conditions. There's a little cub's head. I think it's a cub's head. And a little one. Shame. You can see some of them are a little bit itchy and scratching. But good to see the Nkuhumas. We've actually had a good run with lions. The Nkuhuma female yesterday, and these guys today, and the day before. So it's good. Unfortunately, where that Nkuhuma female was yesterday at Simambili Dam, we are far on the other side. We're on the south eastern side of Chitwa, basically straight south of the airstrip, whereas she's on the northern kind of fence line. So if you had to get a map, which I think I have here, I'll be able to show you exactly how far that is. Give me 2 seconds. I think I have one. Yeah, here we go. Let's see if it will... there we go. That's going to be better, Alex, I think. All right. So to give you an idea, at the moment, I am over there on the blue spot. Okay, that's where I am. You can see I'm right on the cut line of these properties. And if you have a look up here, that is Simambili Dam over there. All right, so that blue little spot in the grey circle is Simambili Dam. And essentially, what these guys are is all the way over here on that blue spot there. So it's a long way. If I zoom the map out, you can see it's from there to there. So they've got to cover a huge ground to come together. This is Juma over here. This is Arathusa and Simambili up on that side. A long way to get for these guys, that's for sure. Actually, looking at the map, I was just having a look now. It looks like, I always forget this about Chitwa, but Chitwa's cut line actually lies slightly south of the road, which is quite interesting. So you can actually go off-road a little bit here. I think I've got a little bit more breathing room. The nice thing about this map is it gives you the exact boundary properties, because it was mapped using an aerial census. And so you can actually get to the exact boundary, which is pretty cool. So we do have a bit of room to play with, which is nice. So I can actually maybe get a little bit closer, which will be cool. Nice. That's a good thing to know. But for now, we're going to just sit tight, because I've got a lot of bushes in the way, and we'd have to kind of crash through them, and I don't want to wake the lions up too much. There's also quite a lot of sickle bush here, and I don't really want to puncture so far from home. That's for sure. Michaela, to a degree, yes. They do get fur balls and fur and bits of bone that they are unable to digest. And so often when that's the case, and they feel as though they're not able to pass things, then they will eat grass. And the grass often triggers them to get sick, and they then regurgitate the balls of fur and bones out. And that just kind of cleans things out a little bit. So they do get very similar things to domestic cats, and it's all because of those hooked tongues that they've got, those tongues that have little micro hairs on them that are quite hardened, which are rough. When they groom themselves, they're taking hair off their own body. Their carcasses that they eat have hair, and they'll often lick that, and so that often is difficult to break down. Keratin is notoriously difficult to break down, and so sometimes they have to regurgitate it out, and like I say, sometimes bone shards are a part of that as well. All right, I'm going to just try and see if I can reposition here slightly, try and see if I can get into a better spot. In the meantime, though, let's send you across to Tswalu Kalahari. They seem like they've got a teeny weeny little creature.
So what we got here is a dung beetle. And they are just simply the coolest little things. So remember when we got to the Kudu carcass? So Yandre and I decided just to amble around and have a look and see if we can find anything. It's quite late in the season for dung beetles, so we're quite lucky to find this one. And it's a nice big one as well. And a couple of things I just want to show you over here. I'm not going to harm it, I promise. You'll notice how large the front legs are. See that? These really, really big front legs. Look there. Yeah? And then the reason for that, okay, is they make these, you get different species, and I can go into quite a bit of detail on why they do it. But a lot of them droppings. And so if you've got a carcass, whether it's a kill or anything, and there's stomach contents lying around, or fresh droppings. In this case, it's obviously stomach contents from the kudu. But if you've got fresh droppings, like example buffalo droppings, you'll get these dung beetles coming in. And one of the strategies that they use for breeding is they'll actually create a ball of dung, okay, and then they'll roll that ball away, dig a burrow and bury it and lay an egg on it. And to have those big front legs, okay, it really assists with rolling the ball, so for leverage. So they'll go up backwards with their front feet on the ground, their back feet on the top of the ball, and then they roll it like that. And there's a wonderful book that was written many years ago, a story about a dog in South Africa, and the guides in the Lowveld will know it very well, called Jock of the Bushveld. And interestingly, the first edition of that book, there was a line drawing depicting a dung beetle rolling a ball of dung with its front legs on top of the ball, which is incorrect. And that was the only edition of the book ever printed with those. And then the subsequent editions all had the ball reversed around in the correct manner. So that's just anecdotally about something interesting about dung beetles. But there's thousands of different species of these guys, and we've done a brief survey on Tswalu so far, and I can't remember the figure offhand, but we're probably sitting on about 40 or 50 species at least of dung beetle, but a lot of work to be done. And the problem with collecting these things, you've really got to be on the ground right through the year, collecting in the correct manner, and on different kinds of dung. I mean, you get, you can get, here's a good example. Here's jackal dung over here. So you could potentially get a completely different species. I don't know if any of you can hear me, but you can get a completely different set of dung beetles actually feeding on droppings like this, predator droppings, as opposed to dung beetles feeding on herbivore droppings. And even within that, you'll get different ones. Some will actually dig a hole straight underneath the pile of dung and take some down there and lay the eggs. Others will just lay their eggs inside the dung itself, and others will actually make the ball and then roll it away. So they've got a whole lot of different strategies. And yeah, you've really just got to be on the lookout for these things all the time. So this, like I mentioned, this is jackal droppings, black-backed jackal. What a wonderful afternoon looking at jackal droppings. Okay, we're gonna. So who are we heading over to now? I'm losing it a bit. We're gonna head over to David and see what they've got on that side. And Yandre and I, we're gonna carry on following this dung beetle because he's heading off into the sunsets over here towards that kudu carcass. So we're gonna head up there, and you guys head over to David and see what they've got on that side.
Welcome back. We're still here with this beautiful baby hippo and mom, and another one. I first thought the baby was standing on a water bank, under the water bank, and then I realized it's actually on the back of its mother. Its mother came up, had the hippo off to the right. It was not mom. Baby hippo will often use their mother as a raft if the water is too deep. There's a good example. How cute is that, eh? And the hippo don't float, they can't swim up to the surface in the traditional sense, so they've got to be in contact with something when they're standing like that. And that little one is on the back of its mother. Very, very cute. It's interesting how they can actually suckle underwater. So it'll go underwater and suckle from its mother. Got an ability to suckle without getting too much water down. Lisa, you've commented it's adorable. It is indeed. Few things as cute as a baby hippo. Anna, you've asked, do hippos spend more time in water or on land? The majority of their time spent is in the water, the daylight hours. Well, I suppose it's nearly half and half. Depends on the season and how much grass is available. If there's lots of grass available, if we've had really good rain and they don't have to move too far for grass, and I only spend a few hours out at night time going to get some good feed. But if it's dead of winter and the grass around the dam has been depleted, then they might have to walk very far, several kilometers, to get good grass, in which case they spend quite a few hours, better part of the night. Sometimes even before the sun sets they'll be out, and they only get back to the dam as the sun's rising. In that case it'll be kind of half and half between water and land. Very cute. This little hippo's got lots of life ahead of it. But for now it's just happy to be in the protection of its mother. And they live for quite a long time. They live around 40 years, so it's got lots to look forward to. Doing what hippos do best. Chilling in the dam during the day, roaming around a bit at night. Sorry FC, that just cut out. Please say that again. Raj, you've asked, what is a hippo's running speed? That's a good question. They are pretty quick. I reckon they would charge, I'm speaking under correction, but when they charge out of the water, say around 50 kilometers an hour, which is very fast for such a appearingly unathletic animal. Very, very quick. Remember, even a lion that are quick and agile predators only reach around 55, 60 kilometers an hour in a burst of speed. So not much slower than a lion, which is an interesting thought. Just stunning. Listen to that audio. Well, from beautiful New Life, to the circle of life that ends in death. Let's send you over to Tswalu with their dead Kudu.
So Yandre and I have been following this little dung beetle all the way from where we left him, about 40 yards away. And he's just been making a beeline, walking the whole way straight towards this delicious meal. So this is the Kudu that we saw from the road earlier. It's an old bull. You can see by the wear and tear on the horns. The condition didn't look too bad, but it's certainly an older animal. Some of the ears have got little tears in them and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it is part of the circle of life. You know, some people don't like seeing these kind of things, and yet it's exactly these kind of things that just enable life to continue. And you can look at this in different ways and say, well, okay, shame, there's a dead kudu, it's sad. But you can also look at this and say, wow, think of this as a package of energy and nutrients that are going into the spot over here. And obviously, when Yandre, we'll have a look over here how hyenas and jackals have been feeding on it here. But the amount of nutrients from this kudu alone that fertilizes this patch of ground, and you can see the dried blood in that over here, and you can see how the hyenas and jackals have been eating away at the hindquarters. This entire leg has been taken off. There's actually gnaw marks all around the back over here. So this is vital. Now, any plants growing around here, now they might get trampled, or they will get trampled. You can get vultures and things and jackals and that trampling and disturbing it. But then they've got this massive boost of nutrients that plants further away don't have. So any seed bank in this area, or any perennial plants, you know, who've been disturbed above ground, but their roots are still active and growing underneath, they've just got a head start as soon as the rains come next season. I think this little dung beetle's like overjoyed. It's like, whoa, all to myself. Okay, here's a really cool one. Speaking of dung beetles, look at the size of this one. So Christine, this whole piece over here has been eaten away. There's a tiny dung beetle over there, that little thing like that. So this entire area here has been eaten away already. So my guess would be during the course of the evening, because it's quite late in the afternoon now. So I think during the course of the evening, you're going to get all those little nocturnal scavengers and that coming out, and they will start feeding on this more and more and more. So absolutely, this is going to get completely gobbled up. There'll be bones in that left and rib cages, but our hyenas will even eat these very thick bones. They'll actually crack them open to get to the marrow. So Yandre and I were just looking at this tiny little dung beetle that came in here. This thing is so small, it's barely the size of the front foot on that other one that we were looking at. And of course then you got all these flies, all these little insects that love carrion, and they'll be laying eggs on here. Yeah. Wow. Circle of life, eh? Circle of life. This is going to sound funny, I know, and you may or may not believe me. The smell here is not bad at all, and Yandre can, you can vouch for it. It smells like fresh meat. This, you can see, this is very, very fresh. There's a bit of, the stomach is out, but remember, all that's inside the stomach is just plant matter. So it's leaves, some twigs, that kind of stuff. So there's actually very little in this that will smell at the moment. I think if nothing eats this tonight, let's say we had to spend the whole night here in Yandre, and I kept all the scavengers away from it, and we left it and left it and left it. It would get to the point where it would actually start just decomposing, and yes, then the smell would be bad. But as we're sitting here, this is absolutely fine. It doesn't smell bad at all. Probably smells better than I do. Okay, so while Yandra and I are enjoying this, let's head over to Tristan with the cats on that side and see what they got.
Well, I'm sure they would love a dead kudu right now, this lot. The poor cubs have been irritating, particularly Amber Eyes. She's been growling and grumpy, so much so that she's gotten up and moved, and now they've turned their attention to a stick. And so it's now time to irritate the stick and bite the stick and play with the stick and keep one's self entertained, because Amber Eyes has been grumpy and disciplining all the children. She was having none of it just now. She's just sitting growling at them. You know, when they lie down and have that low grumble, and it's just, and these poor cubs, you can see their ears go flat and then they skulk off looking very disappointed with life. But this particular guy is at least having a good time by itself. Shame, a little bit itchy. They've been scratching quite a bit. You can see the way that they sit like that, and then the back paw just kind of scratches on that front leg. So itch is still there, and it will be for some time. But some of the cubs look really good, and one or two of them a little bit worse. There's definitely one of the young ones and one of the middle ones that doesn't look that great, but the rest are not too bad, that's for sure. Take your stick, play with it, come on. It's cute. It's very, very, very cute. I'm hoping that the other cubs get FOMO and start coming and watching and playing with the stick as well. For those of you that don't know what FOMO is, it's fear of missing out, abbreviation for fear of missing out. And they come and they start to play around and start picking up sticks. And if one or two start joining, then generally the rest do as well. And they'll chase each other around, and it becomes quite a game that takes place. So I'm hoping that they get a bit of jealousy. What are you doing, silly? Probably teething a little bit, and that's why the stick is being played with. Isn't that cute, though? It's a face of trouble between you and the hyena cubs this morning. You guys have been full of beans and quite adorable as youngsters today, that's for sure. We got spoiled this morning at the hyena den. They were a lot of fun. And these guys, well, this particular one is certainly being entertaining now, that's for sure. Albeit a little lethargic in its movements, still waking up. It's like an early morning for us at this stage. It's a little bit of a pity, though, we are where we are, because behind these guys at the moment is just the most incredible colors in the bush. The bush willows at this time of the year start to change, and they start to have these yellow and red leaves, and the sun is hitting them on the opposite bank. It drops down into a drainage line here and then lifts. But that area there is absolutely beautiful. It is this incredible light that is on that area over there. It's beautiful kind of oranges and greens and reds. And like I say, in the late afternoon, it just looks absolutely beautiful. And it would have been nice if that was on the lions. All right, well, we'll sit here and carry on. Hopefully the cubs will start to play a little bit more. In the meantime, though, let's send you back across to David. I'm sure he's bumbling about, and I wonder if he's going to have some luck later on with those monkeys that were alarm calling.
Haven't gotten too far. Just bumped into this beautiful little herd of waterbuck. Little babies. Nice bull here. Just behind the bushes. You'll make an appearance shortly. Never far from water, hence their name waterbuck. There's a very fluffy little youngster. See, those tails are going just as much as their Nyala. Tails are very important appendages out here with all the insects. It's interesting, since we drove off, I looked up a hippo's top speed, and two of the references I saw was clocked it at 30 kilometers an hour, which is a little bit less than I thought. The top human speed, I think Usain set the record at 45 kilometers an hour, Usain Bolt. I'm pretty sure a hippo would be in the 40s. When they come out of the water, they really move quickly. It's actually unbelievable. I suppose difficult to measure, difficult to be 100% certain. You'd have to wait at a dam for many, many days with a radar gun before you could get that accurate reading. Bottom line is it's quicker than a human can move. If a hippo's chasing you on land, you're not going to outrun it. There comes a nice bull here on the right hand side, standing there in the sand, just over here. What startled him? Oh, it was the other bull. He's a bit of a younger bull. The older bull gave him a little taunt. You can't see the older bull, he's behind the bush, but he obviously said something in Waterbuckian. Beautiful setting. I feel very privileged to just sit here relaxed in this riverbed with these waterbuck. And that one at the back thinks it's a klipspringer. And as always, we do thank you for your support. As the viewers, remember you can always follow that link at the bottom of the page. Your continued support allows us to keep doing what we do, bringing you this magnificence of the African bush right into your homes. Imagine it's difficult all around the world for people cooped up, depending on which country you're in. Different levels of lockdown per se. But hopefully being able to experience this beauty live and with sound can reduce the frustration to a degree. There's only peace out here. Well, from the prey to the predator, let's go over to Tristan with the lion.
Right, so as you can see, we're still sitting with the cubs. This one is being naughty. It's coming and irritating one of the fellow Pride members. I can't see who it is behind this wattle. But this one came and was biting it on the paw, and they were having a little bit of a playtime. A mischievous-looking little cub, this one. It seems to be full of beans this afternoon. I suppose most cubs do have a little bit of mischievousness to them, or look about them. What have you got now? Oh, sticks again. Being silly. There's a slow and gentle wake up at the moment. Some of the adults, like I say, are standing every now and then. Cubs are starting to groom. It's that's kind of slow, steady beginning of the night that lions often do, is when you start to see them playing a little bit, you start to see them yawning, you start to see them grooming. It's an indication that there's almost time for these guys to start waking up and start getting busy with their day. When they are, just flat and sleeping and nobody's actually grooming, then typically it's them just sort of, sleeping and taking it easy, and cubs might get up and sit down. But normally, when you start to see the adults yawning, it's a good indication that there's a thought of getting up and getting going. And it's the right time of the day. The sun has set now, and so, it's going to get dark pretty quickly from now. Oh, trouble, now you're going to break that stick and fall over. Here it goes. You're a silly sausage, you know that. What are you doing? That was very funny. I like how it pushed the stick back up as if to say, no, I didn't break it, it wasn't me. So, pretty strong. It's strong enough that if it bit you, it would puncture your skin. I'm obviously not as strong as an adult because of the fact that they haven't got as developed muscular structure on their neck and heads. You can actually hear it biting this tree. But it's strong enough to hurt, put it that way, if it had to bite you. I mean, at this age, they're going to be eating meat already, and so it's a fairly strong bite force. I don't know if the force has ever been measured, but it is fairly strong. Now, here comes probably the worst of the mange cubs, or mangy cubs at the back there. Are you going to climb the tree? What are you doing? You can't bite the tree up there. This one is naughty, little girl. She's full of it. Can you hear the other ones? No stick is safe in the making of this production when it comes to lions, and particularly this little female. Just listen to that. They're growling at each other. All right, well, we're going to sit here, we're going to enjoy the sounds and the antics of the pride, and while we do that, it sounds like up at and beyond Nyala, they've had some luck with some spotty cats.
Welcome back to Nyala, everyone. As you can see, we've just found this beautiful male leopard. We were actually looking for that lioness and just trying to see if we could find any sign of her moving to and from what we think is the den site, and he was right next to the road, and we almost did exactly the same thing that Tristan did this morning. We literally, lucky, as we were driving past, I turned my head and I just saw the very white tip to the end of his tail. And so we're lucky enough to find him. And he's just been relaxing for the last 5 or so minutes. It's really beautiful to see him, and it's a leopard that I haven't seen in quite a while. And if you just look at his face compared to the leopard we saw this morning, look at his ear, the ear closest to us. See, there's a slight little nick in the ear over there. There's not too many scars around the bridge of his nose, but I mean, if you look at the color of its nose, it's not that bright pink like we experienced this morning. And so this is a much older leopard. And just see by the size of the head, and if he lifts his head up a little bit, you might start to see the development. There you go, that's a nice shot of him, of the dewlap. So this is a male leopard that's territorial within the area. And well done to everyone. I was trying to see if you're able to get there. It is 100% a leopard that we call the Tambuti male, or the Tambuti Tom. The father of the young male that we saw this morning. And this is the first time I've seen him in a very long time. The last time I saw him was actually when he was on that impala carcass and he was feeding in the tree. And that must have been about 3, maybe 4 weeks ago, so quite a while. And one of the reasons why we don't see him too often is he's got a very large territory. And he roams around a lot. He covers huge ground throughout the night, and he just is very hard. If you find tracks of him, it might take you several hours to figure out where he's eventually gone. He's had his head up pretty much the whole time we've seen him. There's a yawn. Awesome. And also, I don't know if you got to see that, but if he does yawn again, have a look at his teeth. Very, very orange teeth compared to much more of a whiter set of teeth that his son has. So another sign of age. Here we go. Look at him. There we go. Look at the dewlap. Looking quite skinny. And that tail. Oh, I love a leopard's tail. And let's see. Hopefully he gets onto the road and he might do some scent marking around here. Or is he going to walk straight up? Oh. So we were having one or two issues with signal, and so we'll try and follow him for as long as we can, but there might become a time that we just won't be. Oh, he's actually just laying down almost reverse straight on top of him. So let me reposition in a better spot. So apparently my lips and the sounds coming out of my mouth aren't matching up, and so we'll focus on a much prettier animal, being the leopard instead of me. But he has lain down. He literally just crossed the road, and what will be very cool, I'll see if we can find it. Okay, so we are just going to stick around here for a little bit longer. It doesn't look like he's moving around, but let's go and see if there's any activity around that carcass at Tswalu. Yapi, Nikki, go ahead.
So at the moment this carcass is pretty quiet. The most action we had there was what we saw earlier, those little dung beetles and the flies and things. But at the moment but we'll just give it some time. We must just be patient. I think that's the biggest thing in the outdoors, is just patience pays. We could be sitting in a worse place. I mean, look at this. I mean, the scenery is just so beautiful. And I'm really glad that we're able to share it with you. You can also get, again, in terms of scavenging on a carcass like this, one automatically thinks of things like hyenas and jackals, the larger ones. But you get a lot of other things that'll feed on these, like mongoose. You'll get yellow mongoose, slender mongoose. Slender mongoose looks almost like a weasel. This tiny, beautiful, russet brown little animal with a long tail with a black tip on it. Beautiful little things. And they'll feed in a carcass like that as well, So there's a lot of things that can go for it. At night, you'll get things like genets as well. That'll forage, and not necessarily from the carcass itself, but also for insects and other things that have been attracted to the carcass. Yeah, it's very quiet now. Remember, in general, the heart of the kudu is actually still inside that kudu, I would guess. I haven't been in to look, but the fact of looking at the amount of feeding that's taken place, it's just on the hindquarters. There's jackals calling just up here now. I don't know if you could hear that, but there's jackals calling up here. So to answer your question, no, I think all those, yeah, I think all the internal organs are still in there, or most of them, obviously. And so now that the fact that the jackals are calling, I think we can just sit nice and quietly and patiently. Hopefully we'll get something. This is so exciting. And so Teresa, that's a good question as to why aren't there any vultures around. We came past here at probably 4 or 5 hours ago, and we didn't know where the carcass was at first, unfortunately. But we saw vultures in the distance, so now that was obviously a lot warmer then. Temperatures dropping again. So by this stage, vultures have all started to go and roost. And I suspect, because there's also not a lot of sign of vultures on the ground, and normally if they've been feeding, there'll be a lot of droppings, and you can actually see vulture footprints, and where they've been perching in the trees, there'll be droppings as well. I'm not seeing that. So I suspect that the vultures that we'd seen circling, that actually probably only picked up on this carcass quite late in the day. The other side of it, maybe there's a predator around here somewhere that we're not even aware of that could be keeping the vultures away. If you look at these hills behind us, a very, very interesting feature here pertaining to vultures is what we've noticed over the years is that there's a lot of turbulence, there's a lot of hot air that rises around these hills. And if you're flying, you can actually feel that. It's not bad, but you can feel there's a definite bumping as you're approaching over these mountains to land at Tswalu. And I think that may have something to do with fewer vultures along the hills here. Whereas out in the far west, then you get a lot of vultures out in those areas. But then there's no mountains, so it's these flatlands. But anyway, I think let's pass you over to Nyala with a leopard sighting. We're just going to sit quietly here, Yandra and myself, and hopefully we'll get something on this carcass.
Welcome back, everyone. This male leopard has just started moving, so we'll see him. Oopsie. Grind it till you find it, as they say. He's walking along one of the prominent game trails that's running parallel to the dense drainage line on our right. He's moving through this open area. So let me just kind of get into a slightly better angle. There we go. So we'll see him moving through the grass, and he gave a couple of yawns, and he literally just got up, and now he's starting to walk, and we get to see the way that he moves around, and this is why it's sometimes so difficult for us to follow his tracks if we find them from the morning, or if he's been walking around in the night and we find him in the morning, just because he does cover this distance so quickly. So I think I'll try when I can to loop around and see if we can get him walking towards us, but we might just have to try and follow him along this prominent game trail. I might actually now see if I can loop around him here. If he goes more into the right hand side, which he is doing, okay, he's basically walking into the impenetrable forests of Nyala. So we might lose him shortly, but we'll try our best to stick with him. We'll see how he lifts up his tail as the birds are calling, almost like a sign to say, I'm not looking to hunt you. Shinth, you asking how far he is from where we saw the Mokoti male, his son, and quite a distance away. I mean, as the crow flies, probably in the region of maybe about 5 or 6 kilometers, and he's moving in completely the opposite direction. Oh, it's awesome to watch these cats move. See, look at him, he's going to scent mark. So he's smelling around, turning around, he'll lift up his tail. He's just squirted urine there. And he's off on his patrol. Just about to sneeze. If only you're here and we could get you to smell that fresh scent of popcorn. You can't see too much there. Well, we've only got a few more moments. If he does continue, he's going to cross down into a riverbed, and then we won't be able to follow him. Let me see. Hannah, you're asking if I think that lions know that they can blend in with the grass, and I think so. I mean, they are camouflage, or they rely on that camouflage to get close to their prey. See him there. One last, oh, he's moving past a beautiful torchwood, and now a different way of marking his territory. See how he's scraping. Switch off there. And so Hannah, yeah, I mean, even leopards would know that they camouflage and that they're the same color as the grass, because they depend on it to get close enough to hunt their prey. So this is a bush that I'm going to drive over, and it is a very flexible bush. It's a young, supple tree, and so as soon as I drive over it, it springs straight back up. Yeah, you see, he's already gone. We've lost him. Oh, can you see him? That's cool. And he's crossed down this very, very steep gully, and we won't follow him, unfortunately, from here. I can't. Looks like he may have slipped us already. I've got this very, very strong scent of popcorn from when he was scraping his back legs. Can you still see him, Owen? Okay. Yeah. I mean, as you can see, he's moved into an area there. As much as I'd love to try and follow him, I don't think it's much of a good idea. And so I think we'll end up moving out of this area. Okay. And so instead of us trying to follow him and just basically fall further and further behind, I think we're going to say good evening to him. But what we'll do from here is just send you back to Tristan at Djuma with his lions, and we'll see if we can find something before the end of the show.
Well, our lions have started to wake up. We're being surrounded by them now. Watch this lioness with the tree. Just now, one of the lionesses stood up, and she was actually trying to scratch her paws, and the whole tree almost came down. She reached so high. Let's see if, I think it's amber eyes, but watch. Let's see if she goes a little bit higher. You see this tree is breaking under the weight of the lionesses. Bless you, girl. The one was standing on her back legs, and they're right next to us. This is so cool. We have lions all around us. Just listen to them as they walk past. Isn't this just magic? Look at these two cubs. You can see how close they are to the back of the vehicle. We have two cubs right in the front of the vehicle. One's playing at the tree. It's all happening at the moment. These two at the tree are making me laugh as well. You can't attack the tree so much and each other at the same time. They've all just decided to wake up at once. Mange or not, you can see. Look at it stretch. Isn't that cute? This is so special. The lions are being playful this afternoon. It's been so wonderful just sitting here, because as one finishes with the tree, the next one comes. And it's just been this kind of rotation. This poor tree is being mangled and maimed by these lions. Like I say, it almost broke in half at one point. The other lioness was so high up that she kind of bent the whole thing, and you can see how much more wobbly it is, even with the cub, now that she's finished with it. I was wondering if the tree was going to fall and she was going to fall on her back at one point, because it was kind of leaning so much. But it's really cool just to be in a situation where you're absolutely surrounded by lions. It's a very special thing. Anushka, in terms of who determines that little one, you're going to fall if you're not careful. It's the meerkat lion. And look, it's stalking its sibling now. So Anushka, the thing is that, look. It depends. Generally, your older females normally initiate the hunts and are the ones that will kind of subtly communicate to the younger ones, and that will kind of work out where everybody positions in order to hunt. But it's not always the case. When I was in the Mara and the Sausage Tree Pride, one of the younger females particularly was the one that used to initiate the hunts. She was the one that would get everybody else going, and then the older females would partake and eventually help out and bring things down. But there was one individual who, like I say, was not in kind of control. She was definitely one of the younger females, but she was just more the one that would initiate. Little one, are you wanting to climb up? Shame, you're a little bit mangy, but you're super cute. This is so special. It's always nice when lions are active, because a lot of the time they can be quite sleepy and not do huge amounts. But this stage, these guys have started to wake up and are far more active. Jenna, indeed, naughty lions. Are being cute though. I mean, I suppose they're not being too naughty. It's not like they're biting the car or anything like that. They're just being cute. Watch this one here. This one is stalking the others that is closest to us. I wonder if it's going to come bounding out. Now just watch. Let's see if it chases after one of its siblings. Often when they lie like this is their way of kind of stalking, and then they kind of bound through. Hi guys. Here it goes. Look. They're playing. Oh, this is so wonderful. How cute is this? Alright, well, we're going to sit here, and in the meantime, apparently we're going to send you off to Tswalu in the Kalahari to go look at a dead kudu.
So how cool is this? Remember we heard the jackal calling earlier? So this little guy's actually just come in probably about 3 minutes after we went across to Nyala. This little guy came in. And he's having a full go at that open area on that carcass already. And you'll notice, you see how he swishes his tail. And it's not that gentle, like, wag, like there's a fly bothering him or something. You probably find this is one of the territorial ones. And that constant, that deliberate tail flick is actually a warning to other jackals in the area that watch out. You'll see that. And he keeps looking. So what you can get, you think these jackals are, okay, it's territorial, you got a male and a female and some youngsters, and that's their area. But if the carcass is big enough, and I'm talking about maybe not a kudu carcass, but in other areas, if you had let's say a dead giraffe or a buffalo from a lion kill, you can actually get jackals from a number of different territories converging on that kill. And while they're all feeding on that kill, there'll obviously be a bit of, aggression between each other while they're there, snapping and snarling and that, but they will actually tolerate each other to a point, and so they can actually move through each other's territories. But on a small kill, maybe actually even smaller than this kudu, they'll actually defend it aggressively against other intruders. So we've got an interesting strategy amongst quite a few animals on the reserve called cooperative breeding. And what that is, you will get a dominant male and a female that will have youngsters. And when those youngsters grow up, and they can be young adults. Thank you for that comment. Jackals aren't so rare in our area, but in some areas they are rare, and you get a species in South Africa, unfortunately they don't occur on Tswalu, called a side-striped jackal, which the guys down at Nkuhuma and Nyala, if they're very lucky, they may see them down there. But that's a lot less common than this species, so we are still very, very privileged to see this one, so thank you for that. In terms of the breeding that I was talking about, the youngsters that are born, they will actually help the parents raise the next litter of youngsters. So you could even get 8, 9, 10 jackal around this that are all related. And we've got a couple of other species that do that as well. Meerkats do it. We've got things called pygmy falcons, which if we're lucky we'll see as well. But we'll talk about all of this over the coming weeks. There's some cool stuff we can show you. There's a clever jackal. He's comes in now when he's got less chance of encountering your other bigger predators. You could get anything rocking up on this kudu. You could get leopard scavenging on it, brown hyena, spotted hyena, things like that. So it's nice, and lots of other jackals, of course. It's nice that he's coming now. He's kind of taking this gap while he can, and then he'll feed quite a bit, and then he'll move off later. And also, if he can feed now, that means there's less likelihood of him having to hang around when others get you. While this little guy is going to carry on feeding, David has small or hyena cubs. And that's going to be amazing. So head over to him and see what he's got that side.
And of course we couldn't resist spending some time with these little playful spotted hyena cubs. Rachel, you reckon this is so cute? Of course. It's nothing else. That is the best word. They're just adorable little guys. You can watch them for hours playing. Stretching those legs, taking tight turns and bounds and leaps. They're practicing for the future, getting their running legs on. Hyena are known for their incredible endurance and ability to move and run long distances. So they are practicing. Lots of energy in those little bodies. Ribbon's milk is extremely nutritious. Probably the most nutritious milk that you'll find in the bush. Or in any mammal, I would imagine. Mostly due to the amount of calcium that hyenas consume. So that milk is going to be very nutritious. Lots of fats and proteins that these little guys need to survive. So no wonder they've got lots of energy. Chloe saying their faces are so cute. They do have cute little button faces. Look at those noses, already so well developed. They're already sniffing and smelling. Those noses are what is going to lead them to food. And will keep them on the path to finding what they need to find to stay alive. Good endurance and good noses. But we're going to sit here a little bit longer. Let's send you back over to Tristan for an update on his lion.
Well, it is just absolute chaos. Look at this one stalking. Look, look, look. They're stalking each other. They are biting each other. The females have been playing as well, and they've been having stick wars, and it's just been chaos. There's been little ones and adults all playing and having the best time. Now, the one that's stalking is going to run. There we go. Look, look, look. This has been so special to watch. Even, like I say, the adults have been so much fun. They've been wanting to play with the little ones, and at one point one had a stick and they were pulling it against a tree, and it was like a little seesaw between them as they were having this game. It's been really, really cool to see. Alright, let's try catch up with them so we can carry on watching the antics of the little ones. It was also quite funny. Go.
Not much has changed except these little bundles of energy have been running around. I did see something interesting when you're over with Tristan. One of the little ones seem to do pasting, which is a interesting practice of hyenas. They squat over a stalk of grass and they paste it or cover it and run their anal gland over it, so they are transmitting a scent. It's barely visible, but it's the smell that counts, and clans will use that to signify their area or signify that they are there or they smell. And it's very interesting that these young cubs, or one of those young cubs just did that. As far as I know, their anal glands are still underdeveloped at this stage, but the theories are that they would do that at such a young age to actually pick up the bacteria that is left there by other adult hyenas, to perhaps stimulate the anal gland themselves so that they can have what is necessary to be part of the clan. Very, very interesting. It's called pasting. And it's the first time I've ever seen such a young hyena do it. Rachel, you said you love baby hyenas. I think they are a firm favorite. Baby anything out here is cute. That baby hippo is very cute. What's it got there? It had something. Didn't last long. Chewing on a stick probably. Developing those jaws that become such powerful jaws later on in their life. Some interesting action over in Tswalu with the dead Kudu. a jackal. So let's send you over there and see what's happening.
So this little Jax is still going full on at this carcass. Hasn't slowed down the entire time. He walked away about 10 yards, looking east, and then he came straight back again. But how's that for a magnificent sunset, eh? Another tough day in Africa. Let's see what that little jackal's up to. He's still tugging at that hind quarter. But look at those beautiful patterns on his back, eh? Absolutely gorgeous animals. Wow. And that's exactly the circle of life that you're watching there. You know, one animal dies and it just creates this incredible. Thank you, Lady Macbeth. I can't agree with you more. The sunset, the jackal, the entire setting is just drop dead gorgeous tonight. So, obviously most of the viewers will have heard or have your own dogs, and you would know about their sense of smell, how good their sense of smell is. And jackals are no different. They are absolutely remarkable with their sense of smell. So even if this guy was 5 k's away, he would have picked up the scent of this kudu and just homed in on it. But anyway, while he's still busy feeding and it's fairly quiet here, he's actually just finished now, so he's just starting to move off. Let's head over to Tristan and follow up with what their sighting is.
We're with the lions. The lions are now starting to hunt. They've changed their whole demeanor. They've stopped playing and they're on the airstrip. And I think what's happened is they've maybe noticed that there's some impalas further up ahead. The lionesses are splitting out completely. And it's been so interesting to watch how the lions split, or the lionesses, and the cubs have stopped their games immediately. They're all just kind of sitting on the road and they're just watching these lionesses. And from this is how they're going to learn how to hunt. So what we've got is we've got 2 lionesses behind us, one that's going off onto the other side of the airstrip, these 2 lionesses that are here, and then 2 lionesses in the front of us. And what I think they're going to try and do is they're going to try and get some of them into the thickets, and then they're going to come round and potentially chase back over the airstrip. But it's really cool to watch as they kind of figure out their plan. And I was hoping that they were going to come into this area. Look at them coming our way now. They're going to probably walk right past the car, which should be super cool. I love how their eyes glow as they walk towards you. It's one of those kind of creepy things when you watch predators and their eyes as they do it. If they do start walking past, I'm going to just keep quiet so that you can hear how quiet these guys actually are. In some cases, silence is deafening, and it is like that with lions. When they walk past, their soft padded feet just are the best thing in order to deaden sound. But if you notice how everybody is just stationary, everyone is listening, they're really just trying to work out where each one is going to go, and through subtle visual cues, they will. Here comes one of the lionesses. She should come right past us. You can see there. Look at that. They really are magnificent lions, these guys. It is the most incredible view right now because unfortunately it's a bit dark to film without lights, but if we had our lights on and we were able to show you in color, there is this orange light that is coming through on the western horizon. These lines, a dead tree, a crescent moon, it is absolutely beautiful, and it's got so much atmosphere just sitting here in the dark, lines all around us. And like I say, a setting sun there. You can see the one that's limping a little bit. You see how her hip is atrophied in comparison to the lion nest closest to us. Her hip doesn't have the same muscle structure as the lioness closest to us, and is still kind of a bit weak, but she's putting pressure on it, which means that it'll eventually get better. What are they stalking? There's impalas, just shouted at them. Can you hear them? Oh, Lorimer, they are long-bodied lions, aren't they? It's so cool to hear that. What amazes me, though, is the cubs. The cubs are the most fascinating part about this. Look at how good they are. They know that they need to sit still and they need to just watch. So they walk a little bit, but those antics of playing and charging around and making noise has completely come to the end. They all stopped and listened and looked and watched. And that's, like I say, how they're going to become efficient hunters in the future, is by learning from the adults. They're listening to the impala snorting. Now, if the adults started to get into stalk mode, all of these would just drop down and they would sit. They wouldn't follow the lionesses any further. They know that they need to just then be patient and wait. But hopefully we'll get a walk by from all of them. The little ones are coming now as well. Hey guys. Shame. This is the one in front, is the one with the mangy legs. James, what should you say? We haven't been taken on a proper lion hunt in a while. I know it has been a while since we have done lion hunts. The problem is where they're heading is going to be so difficult for us to follow them. They're heading into an area that, I mean, I remember once following Tundi and Wabayiza through here. A lot of you won't know who Wabayiza is, but it was Tundi's first cub that she had. And in 2012, or 2011 actually, that I followed them through there, and it was so ridiculous. We lost her after about 2 minutes, and the lions are heading to the exact same block. It's lots of fallen over stumps and lots of holes from aardvark, so you've got to be so careful driving in that area. So it's going to be a bit tricky, but let's try. I'm hoping what they're going to do is just use the eastern edge of the airstrip and walk north up there in the thickets, and then try and launch out from there in a hope that they can get closer to these impalas without being spotted. But it's amazing just sitting here with these guys. So cool. I love watching these cubs and seeing how studious they can be when they think that there's a possible hunt around. You can see how they follow the body language of the adults. Giraffe, well, exactly. It's much like humans in a way. It's watching, waiting, learning, listening. These things are all huge components of becoming an adult lion. If they don't sit and watch and wait and listen, they're never going to get it right, and they're never going to be able to learn the tactics that are needed in order to be successful adult lions. And remember, when it's a pride system, there has to be small, subtle cues, because they can't be loud when they're hunting. They can't grunt to each other or roar or any of those kind of things. It has to be subtle, and it has to be silent. And so they'll follow the cues of shoulders going down. Look, there's one that's stalking another one in front here, and just on the right. Watch that one. It hopefully will go jumping forward, because there's another one coming in front of it. Let's see. Just see the one in the distance. It's quite far out of the IR range, but that's the one that it was watching. I was hoping it was going to go bounding towards it. Very, very cool. The other problem with following a pride like this when they're on the hunt through thick, dense areas is these cubs are still very little, some of them. And while, yes, they are with the pride, I don't actually want to off-road too much with the cubs. And it might sound funny, but when you off-road in these areas, hyenas have learnt in this section of the world that off-roading is a sign that we're following some sort of a predator, particularly at night. And what you'll find is that they'll then start coming in and actually following the vehicle, and that will put these cubs at risk. If they were on the road, different story, but crashing through the bush, not a clever idea with cubs. And so what I think I'm going to do is just stick to the roads. If I can't see them on the roads, then we might leave them and let them go. But while they drift off into the thickets and it starts to get a little bit dark and out of our IR range, we're going to send you back across to David and the hyena cubs.
Unfortunately, the cubs have just gone down the hole. Perhaps worn out from all the playing and the running around. And Ribbon has also walked off. I'm not sure where she's gone. So all quiet at the hyena den. We'll sit here another couple minutes and see if they might make a reappearance. Otherwise, can always come back tomorrow. It's been lovely watching them play. Well, things seem to be multiplying in the desert. Let's send you over to Tswalu that now have 2 jackal.
The second jackal just arrived. They're obviously very familiar with each other, so it could be, the one could be either could be a male and a female. It's difficult to see from this distance, or it could be a youngster from a previous litter. Remember, alert to something down to our left-hand side. Look here. Sorry, we lost you guys there a little bit. I was just saying these jackals are very alert to something down just east of them. Now, there's quite a bit of thick bush down there, so we can't see, but they keep watching. So there may be a hyena or even perhaps other jackals coming in later. But we're losing light fast now. With the sun that's over the horizon. But we've been very, very lucky to see these guys. So Elgin, jackals are dogs. So they're canids, so they belong to the dog family. But they're a different genus. Well, the genus is the same, but they're different species. So remember, they are canids. They act like dogs, they look like dogs, but they're different species to domestic dogs. And also very, very different to African wild dogs, which hopefully we'll see over the next couple of weeks as well. How are those colors on them, man? Look at those black and white patterns on the back and that black stripe on the side. Very pretty animals. So Carmilla's just asked if jackals stay in families, and yes, they do. But it doesn't necessarily, because they stay in family groups, doesn't necessarily mean you will always see them together. In other words, your territorial pair, your dominant pair, you could see them together regularly, patrolling their territories, feeding, defending it against others. But then they're older youngsters that help them raise the little ones. They can, because they've also got to go disperse at some point and get territories of their own. So as that starts happening, they will start moving further and further and further afield, but then coming back to a central den. So yes, they do live in family groups, But that family group can literally be 2 animals, or it can be 5, 6, 7 animals. That little head shake that he gives every now and again, you've got these small flies called louse flies. And it's a small little khaki brown colored fly. That's probably what's irritating him around his ears. They often get in the fur at the base of the skull and behind the ears. You see that, the little head flick? The other jackals moved off now. I'm sorry, I didn't get the name there, unfortunately. But the question is, can we go off-road at Tswalu? And the answer is yes, we can. But we're obviously very careful about how we do it and what we go off-road for. Remember, we were talking earlier about, those of you on, we were talking earlier about the amount of life that stays underground over here. And there are areas where you got more of that and other areas that are less. So if you are going to go off-road, there needs to be a really good reason for it. And, that may be a leopard, or a leopard with cubs, or wild dogs hunting, something like that. But anytime you go off-road, you got to really appreciate what's out there, and you got to be doing that as sensitively as you can. So yes, we can go off-road, but we'll be very, very careful about how we do it and when we do it. So while this little one's having dinner, an early dinner, Tristan is busy following the lion pride. So let's head over to him.
I am following the lions who are looking for dinner. Unfortunately, it seems like when they got onto this eastern side of the airstrip, they looked too interested in the impalas. I think for a pride of this size, impalas are just not enough food, and they need a little bit more than that, and so they seem to be on the walk now. The good news though is that they are heading north, which is a good thing for obviously us and them coming hopefully back into Nkuhuma. But there's something incredibly exhilarating in following lions in the dead of the night. Walking with them, particularly with the setup that we have that is infrared, a lot of the time it's with very little light that we drive around, and hearing them and your senses kicking into overdrive, listening to lions walking and fading into the darkness is absolutely unbelievable. Now, unfortunately, our infrared struggles a little bit, so I'm going to help it with a little bit of extra light when out the front. I don't want to put my brights on or anything like that. I also need to see where I'm driving, so a small bit of light is really helpful in terms of seeing what's going on. I don't want to harass them and get too close, but I'm just going to try and keep it within infrared range as they walk along. Now, a nice little trick here is if any of you ever go into the Kruger National Park on your own and do your self-drive, you put your car, if you do have a 4x4 vehicle, put your car into low range first gear, and it will coast at the exact same speed that lions walk, which is pretty cool. So it's just a tip if you're ever on a self-drive somewhere. So 50, if you... well, you're saying that they must find the buffalo. Well, that'll be nice. Hopefully they find it on Nkuhuma and we'll get a chance. Enjoyed this evening, and you've enjoyed all of the things that have come to you today. It's been an incredible day with the addition of Tswalu in the Kalahari and obviously Nyala. It really has been amazing to see how much variety we're now getting every day, and it's because of all of you that we're able to do all of this. So if you do want to support us to continue this and to keep growing this incredible experience for us all, then please just use the support link down below, and it would be greatly appreciated. But isn't this cool? Just coasting behind lions. It's so much fun. I think our IR light is struggling a little bit, so I'm just going to give it a little bit of light. Now, we're going to just extend for a little bit. I just want to see if they start stalking. Normally we would finish up now, but I think it's been so long since we've had lions on the move and potentially going for a hunt that I just want to see what they do while they're close to the airstrip, because they might loop around. So it's going to be good for us just to follow them for a little bit. Like I say, we'll just extend the show slightly. I'm sure none of you will mind too much if we extend things and carry on a little bit. It's always super interesting following these guys into the night. The poor little cubs are being walked. You can see they're the ones right at the back at the moment. But the lions, what's interesting with them is they constantly stop and they look to the airstrip side, So I wonder if they're not just stopping and giving a little listen, seeing if they can pick anything up. The other interesting thing about this route that they're taking now, this is the exact same route that the Torchwood Pride took just about, 4 or 5 days ago. They walked this exact road all the way through, and so it's almost like they're following the exact route that the Torchwoods followed, and I wonder if they're not picking up their scent from time to time. Look at that of lions. I'm actually going to just zoom in a little bit so you can see all of them. It's just all these bodies disappearing into the darkness. Cool as that. It's very cool. Little cubs at the back, which is pretty typical for a lion pride moving through the night. So I believe a lot of you are excited that we're going to just carry on for a little bit. Like I say, I mean, we'll follow them for a while. If they start going into thickets, as I mentioned before, I'm not going to follow them into thickets. It's dangerous for the cubs, and ultimately out here we've got to be sensitive to those kinds of things. We don't want to be the ones that cause any sort of incident to take place for little lions, the animal for that regard. And so you've always got to put the animal's best interest first before ourselves. And so when they go into thickets, then that's it, I'm afraid. If they are stalking and they're in an open clearing, like they were at the airstrip, different. But in here, it's a very different thing. Look at that. It's just lions all over the place, from big to small. Look how they all stop and listen. So what they're trying to hear is they're trying to hear leaves rustle or the movement of animals through the thicket. Once they're satisfied that it's nothing, then they carry on. And you see how everybody stops, and as soon as the adult females walk, the cubs walk. If the adult females stop, the cubs stop immediately. They know full well how it goes when it comes to hunting. They know how they have to behave when the pride is on the hunt. If that wasn't the case, then the little cubs will eventually just ruin so many hunts that the pride would go hungry. So it's important that they watch the adults' body language and basically mimic what they do. It's really fascinating to see it. It's incredibly interesting watching that learning behavior take place. But there's definitely something that's interested them on the right here. Particular area that we're in has got a lot of kudu, particularly. They love these thickets here, and a kudu would be a fairly decent meal for this pride. So if they hear kudu in here, then they wouldn't be surprised if they potentially try and hunt them. The one thing that also could be around is elephants. I did hear them when we were sitting with the lions somewhere in this area, and so if the elephants are around, they sometimes break branches and move leaves a little bit, and that does attract a bit of attention to themselves. But the lions will figure it out pretty quickly. Their ears are so sensitive that they'll know exactly what they're listening to, and they'll know whether or not it's kudu or elephant or whatever it may be, and therefore apply a technique with that. But it's just a few steps forward, stop, listen, a few steps forward, stop, listen. What incredible is how quiet they are when they do this. Those soft padded feet are perfectly designed for these kind of stalking processes. It cushions the blow. They're also very careful about where they put their feet when they're in this kind of mode. They're not trying to make a lot of noise, so that back foot will pretty much stand where the front foot was, and they'll just kind of keep it nice and quiet. I believe a lot of you are enjoying watching the cubs and their response to the adults. Fascinating, and it's like I said, it's not all that common that we get to spend huge amounts of time with the lions, so it's nice when we can, particularly when they're active. You know, the Nkuhumas often are quite a sleepy pride, and because they haven't spent huge amounts of time on Djuma of late, it's been difficult to follow on hunts and things like that, so it's really nice to have an opportunity to follow them again. Right, Alex, I'm going to try and get a little bit closer just because IR is running out a little bit. I'm just using one of my side lights, which is very, very, very soft, just to try and kind of help us a little bit, because the infrared doesn't seem to be working all that well. It's certainly not as bright as it should be, so if they do start stalking, then we have to turn off all these lights. Right, well, we're following the lines, but it sounds like David has found something very cool that we don't see all that often.
And it is a very unusual sighting indeed. It's a civet. Do you see them from time to time, but not as commonly as one might think. Generally, they a very brief glimpse as they run into the bushes. This one's rather relaxed. I don't want to get too close or scare it. Often mistaken for leopard. Their eyes are similar at night, and their body sometimes moves in a similar way, and of course the coloration. So generally gets one excited, but a very interesting animal nonetheless. And off it goes into the bush. The hyena are calling. The moon is growing and it's a beautiful evening here. We're going to sit under this tree a little while longer and listen to the bush. While we do that, let's send you back over to Tristan and the Nkuhumas.
How cool is that to get a civet? It's been ages since we've had a civet live. And so that's a super cool nocturnal animal to get. Civets are one of my favorite creatures that are active at night. I really like civets. There's something odd about them with their short little legs and bulky bodies, and those markings are just spectacular. They really are pretty animals, and so nice when you get to see one. And it just goes to show you never really know what can happen. We've had a few quiet evenings, and all of a sudden we're starting to get a whole bunch of changes, and we're getting cats, and we're getting nocturnal creatures, the hyena cubs on Djuma, so it's been really, really good from that point of view. The lions are still moving. I'm not sure if they have anything in mind. They keep stopping and just staring to the right here, as though there's something in this block to my right-hand side. I don't know if it's just checking and precautionary, or if it's actually something that they're intent on potentially following. The thing is, though, is the road's about to split into three directions. One will take it back to Chitwa Dam, the other one's going to take to Torchwood, and the other ones can take you to Cheetah Plains. So I'm intrigued to see if they carry on the road, or if they're going to cut into the block and start kind of going after something. For now, it just looks like they're just walking down the road and just stopping and listening and being attentive, but I do just want to check to see if there is any kind of sign of them actually cutting off or showing any interest. So we'll give it a few more minutes just to check. Bubs, they're going to be very, very close while the lions are walking on the road. As soon as the lionesses start to show any sort of stalking signature, they're going to go down straight away, and then they'll wait. As long as the lionesses are in a stalking posture and moving away from them, they're not going to follow. And so that sometimes means that they get left behind quite far. I've seen little lion cubs being left a kilometer from where the lionesses originally started hunting. But the lions will have a crack, and if they miss, they immediately go back to the cubs and fetch them. They don't leave them on their own for too long, particularly at night. There's a lot of dangerous things out here, like hyenas and the likes. And so it really just depends on how quick the hunt is or how long it takes. But generally, they kind of stay within eye shot of the adults. Gemma, you're saying I'm definitely making up for the missed lioness this morning. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's about making it up. I think it's just nice to spend time with lions. We love being out in the bush just as much as you all enjoy watching it. So for me, it's equally special to be out here. And I suppose in a way it's more making up for the quiet time that we've had of late. We've really, at Antlions Nyala, they've seen a lot. And they've really been helping us out in that respect from a cat point of view. But for us, it's been quiet for cats. And so I think it's just making up for that and allowing us as much time as possible. And I always say this when I sit with animals, is that spending as much time as you can with them will give you better chance of seeing those extraordinary things, whether that be an incredibly interesting playing scenario, fighting scenario, hunt scenario, but you'll actually get time to spend. You'll eventually get some sort of activity from that animal, and that goes for everything. And often I see people coming into game reserves, into national parks, and they want to rush everything. So it's find the lions, take a photo, and then let's go. Rather than just saying, you know what, these lions are sleeping, they don't have full bellies, it means they're going to be on the hunt tonight, let's be patient and wait. There's so much you can talk about and discuss and appreciate in nature sitting with lions. You can talk about the trees around them, you can talk about the sky, the clouds, the geology, all these things if you are bored of the kind of lions sleeping. But you know at some point that's going to change. And so my advice to anybody in any scenario when you go into a wildlife area is to be as patient as possible and to try and say, I'm going to follow lions today and I'm going to spend my time with them. And Brent actually once did a really nice thing. Brent was a guide that used to work at Wild Earth, and he once had the Nkuhuma pride, and they were hungry, and they for day after day were just looking like they needed a meal, and he kept going back even though they slept, and he kept going back even though they slept more. And it got to the point where everyone was just like, enough of sleeping lions. But eventually, I think it was about 6 or 7 days, it eventually paid off for him when he got these Nkuhumas hunting a buffalo and bringing it down in afternoon light. So it just goes to show that you've just got to be a bit patient, and the more time you spend with an animal, the more likely you are to get something special out of it. You can't expect things just to happen overnight and to happen in 2 seconds. Things, unfortunately, do take time. All right, they're cutting off into the bush now, unfortunately, so I think we're going to call it there with one little lonely cub in the road. Shame, it looks as though it's kind of been left behind. But I'm not going to follow them through this thicket. It's not going to be good. Like I say, these little ones are sensitive to cubs. So, sensitive to hyenas and things like that. So I don't really want to disturb that too much. We followed them for a while just to see if they would hunt, but anyway. Rachel, you say this has been incredibly special. Glad that you enjoyed it. Like I say, for us it's really cool to be out here with all of you guys as well, and so I hope that you all have a wonderful evening. It's been an absolute pleasure from all of us. It certainly has been a sterling day, so from the entire team, it's a very special thanks, and we'll see you all tomorrow morning on our sunrise safari.